392nd meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody here. If you've got cell phones, please put them on silent or turn them off. We're kind of tight with numbers, and we have enough for a quorum, so just barely. So we'll begin, and we'll go straight to item 2, approval of the minutes of the 391st. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the 391st meeting.
Second. Been moved and seconded that we approve the January 27th, 2015 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? If none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Ellis will give us his report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Good morning.
I've already been asked questions, so I'll just show you the camera that is up there in that laptop right now. It's a little low tech, but we're transitioning into the higher tech commission record where there'll be a video as well as an audio of these meetings. And so for today, we're still in this transition, getting all the electronics up and running. There's actually another camera behind the pull down screen. But there's the camera, and you guys are. We're going to start putting this up on our YouTube channel. There'll be a video and the audio together, so a better recording. So anyway, everyone, be at your best behavior. I'm glad to be here this morning and to give my report and welcome the audience. And I think the first thing that we'll talk about is the legislative session. Actually, session's over, but our issues are not resolved. The governor has not signed our 2 budget bills. We have a 3rd bill, our EIA lab bill is also not signed, so we're not taking anything for granted at this point. Mary Ludick will give you a complete update on the legislative issues, but I want to start by thanking the commissioners for your support. Some of y'all came down more than once to help talk to folks and just provide support and information is needed. So I want to thank you. I want to thank the stakeholders, many of y'all in the audience, and they're very helpful to the commission, supportive with information, ideas, talking on our behalf, and I think I couldn't appreciate our working relationship more than we have with our stakeholders. And then our key staff on the Animal Health Commission, Mr. Luna and his staff for budget, Larissa Smith for monitoring the bills, of course, Mary Ludick, she was our ace quarterback here and spent mindless hours. I don't even know how many hours down there watching things at 2 in the morning on committee hearings and things. So thank you, Mary, for all you did and are still doing to represent the Animal Health Commission. Yeah, overall, it would appear that we came out of this session as good as you can come. I think the thing that I'm proud of is I don't think we have one badass right now. There's no enemies. That's always important. And that's, again, the hard work of our staff and communicating clearly, representing the industries as they want and as is appropriate, and just a good process in all. We answer questions, we get appropriate things at the appropriate times and communicate clearly. So I'm going to be proud of where we're at. I think this was my 3rd session, and we're getting better. Every session we get better and stuff. So anyway, that's my take on it. I believe our message on border security was well received. It was timely, it was the truth, and the budget that we're probably going to get is a reflection of that. And then obviously our fever tick and our feral swine and our dairy TB issues generate a lot of support for us. The environment was conducive to an understanding by those involved of what the agency is doing and what we continue to do things appropriate. So all in all, I couldn't be happier for the way things went this spring, and I'm really happy it's over. As I said, Mary will have more information related to the budget issues. They are not signed by the governor, so there is always the opportunity for the governor to use discretion however he sees fit. So we're not taking anything for granted. And probably the biggest issue for the agency business-wise is when the budget is signed, assuming it's similar what we think it's gonna be. Then we'll go to a transition stage. We have, 2 budget bills, the supplemental bill, which is almost $800,000 this fiscal year. And, we were running a deficit, for the next year, there's a considerable increase. And so we'll have to look at our strategy for how we transition in the environment of hiring some more people. We're gonna have the luxury to address things like the permit issue in the Panhandle. So we'll have to sit down with our key management staff, stakeholders to some degree, you guys as appropriate as well, as kind of flesh out where the agency should be in 2 years, which on paper right now, we have 30 or so more folks, maybe 40, because we have some vacancies now, and considerable amount more of equipment and ability to address some unmet needs right now. So that's on our books. We're unwinding our strategy. We had a strategy to how to balance the books, which basically was front-ending federal money that's intended for next year to this fiscal year, because we're able to move some money across. So we have to start to unwind that. And we're going to push that federal funds back to where it's supposed to be, which is next year. And so we'll work on that first, and work with our USDA partners, Dr. Hazel and her group, to unwind some contingency plans we had to expedite federal funds from future years into this year. There are some rules, 3 rules up for passage today in your book. These were basically I think we had one comment on one of them. The other 2, I'm not sure we had any comments. I'm generalizing here. But basically, my assessment is there was no real issues or concerns about these rules. And you can see in there, one is a rule Dr. Culp and Laura Guerra, the authorized personnel folks, Eugene and Mary, have been working for a while on writing a chapter on what are the rules for lay folks, primarily deer owners, servant owners, who collect grains without being a veterinarian for our CWD surveillance. And that took some time, and that's on the books and passage there. All the processes related to CWD surveillance and surveillance. The feral swine, kind of a simple rule, but it's going to help us with our inspections, make it simpler to have one good fence instead of 2 double fences. And sometimes when we look at that second fence, you might go, okay, well, the second fence is the section fence. Sometimes the section fence was only that far apart. It just wasn't necessary, so it's going to help our inspections. It's going to help more people qualify to be feral swine holding facilities, which is what we want. We want to support the legal terminal capture of feral swine, so folks can make some money and they can go to the outlets that are legal and also keep those numbers down as much as possible. So that's that. And the third rule is up for passage that we all passed as a proposal last meeting, was changing the equine interstate health certificates from 45 to 30 days, which brings them in alignment with all our other species and brings us in alignment with the other 49 states and keeps us from violating federal rules any longer, because the health certificate is supposed to be 30 days for interstate movement. So that's the third rule. Up for proposal this time, a rule on the fever tick zone related to official ID. As y'all recall, the session before last, the agency was given the authority to promulgate rules related to fever tick inspections, and y'all did that. Passed the rules about annual inspections and for vaccine when it's available and for official ID. And the issue was that the rules that were passed just referred to the systematic and the permanent zone and didn't include temporary zones. As y'all can see in the wall there, we have a very significant temporary zone. So we're just clarifying some language on the need for official identification, mainly in cattle inside of the temporary zone. The truth is these zones need this more than a permanent zone, because these folks are less likely to understand the rules, and so more likely to accidentally or intentionally move animals out of there. And we've already had a number of traces, so we need to have good ID so we can find these animals. And so this is really just cleaning up an oversight in our part from last year when we say all zones. And so that rule is up for proposal, and we've, the stakeholder groups, we've run that by those folks as well. Best I can tell, it was okay with your proposal. Entry requirements, a couple of different rules, and when we propose rules, it could be one disease in 2 chapters. So you might have a chapter that's managing the disease, like trichomoniasis, and then you have, if there's a specific entry requirement, it's in a different chapter. It's in the entry requirements chapter. So you're going to see things on trichomoniasis in both the injury chapter and in just the trick chapter. That's why it's just the way we're organized right now. And I don't know if we'll, maybe we can take a look at cleaning that up in the future, but it would be a fairly complex issue. So under injury requirements, the working group, strict working group met in April under Dr. Colemont's leadership. And one of the recommendations for proposal is to complete the harmonization concept of Texas, working with other states that have similar injury requirements. And so that is a rule for proposal, which is to accept virgin bulls up to 18 months. It was 12 months and go up to 18 months. And also a vesicular stomatitis component within our injury requirements, which was the result of a national working group that some of us here in the room went up and met in Colorado and worked through guidelines for states when there's a vesicular stomatitis outbreak. And so this concept is to shorten the health certificate validity down to 14 days. So right now, if you're going to propose to change the rule, unfortunately, from 45 to 30, this rule would say, okay, if they're coming from someone with vesicular stomatitis, it would be a 14-day health requirement. That would be the maximum since they look at that rather than 30. That's because some of the information components of diseases are short. In this context, specifically CPS, infection period is much shorter. So that's a proposal. And again, that would make us consistent with the guidelines recommended. There were 6 state vets involved in that working group, as well as UCA. It's an industry focus. So that's a proposal. Trichomoniasis, specifically the third rule up for passage of the third set of rules is related to chapter 38, the chapter. And this was the 6th meeting of the working group, and probably the 3rd or the 4th year that this has come up for discussion. And I'm requiring testing of fence line adjacents to infected birds. And the industry thought about it pretty closely last year, decided to have folks like me and Mr. Locke and others go around and talk to industry folks about the idea. Last year after the meeting, I went to TSRA, I went to ICA, I went to Farm Bureau, I went to TVNA, and I went to those 4 industry groups to talk about it. Everyone thought about it when the group met in April. I actually recused myself from leading this discussion, the Coleman led discussion with industry groups. And after really not a whole lot of discussion, they decided that the commission should propose a rule requiring bulls and the fence line adjacents to infected tested once. They're not to be put under hold order. And so this is a rule that's been vetted pretty well with the cattle industry and affiliated stakeholders. The working group's given it due consideration over 2 or 3 years now, and it's up for proposal. The second part of that is to try and make the virgin status consistent between in-state and out-of-state bulls. And so it's a recommendation to lower the virgin status down to 18 months from 24 months. I think the working group, if you ask their opinion, would just say they don't like virgins at all. Really, it's buyer beware the way I look at it. I think it's a necessary evil to allow virgins to sell. It makes sense, but you really are not protected with much when you buy virgin bulls. If you really want to keep out of the trick business, you have to get your bulls tested anyway. Our challenge here will be, and we'll work with the livestock industry, I don't really see a lot of need for us to change, even though the age is going to change. We have legal outlets for bulls, untested bulls now go to legal ops and different locations. So this, in my mind, is primarily addressing purebred sales, breeding sales. We're still going to allow Texas bulls to go up to 30 months if the veterinarian will go sign it. So I think, theoretically and conceptually, it's making a point. But from an application standpoint, it would not be my intention for the commission employees to do much different than they're doing now at markets and special sales related to this concept, other than obviously, we're lowering the age 6 months, but most big bulls are not going back to be breeding bulls from market. Most bulls at special sales can be certified as virgins that are tested. So really, this is more of what I would describe as just an attempt to be consistent in our language between out-of-state and Texas bulls without really much impact. But we will need to work through this with our affected industries and make sure that this is not misconstrued in some way. Again, this is the recommendation. of the committee. It wasn't even on the agenda. It wasn't even on the agenda to discuss about it, but when folks sat around the room and realized that we were raising the age of virgins from out of state to 18 months, and we thought that was kind of a reasonable age, and why were we not doing the same in Texas rules? And the threat is about the same. The Texas rules are no better or no worse than most other states, with a couple of exceptions. So those are your rules up for proposal. The next thing on my agenda is just a reference to the ongoing long-term 20-year process of Mexican-U.S. binational TB brucellosis and fever tick committee. Some of y'all have been involved with this. This committee meets twice a year, once with the U.S. cattle industry at NCBA meeting, and once with the Mexican cattle industry at their CNOG meeting. I don't know, that stands for Ganadero Committee Nacional. It's the National Committee of Cattle. I don't know what the O stands for, I forget, but anyway, CNOG is the equivalent of NCBA, really. And so Dr. Schwartz went to Mexico this year. He went to Veracruz, and I was at San Antonio. And the best part about this meeting, in my mind, is I find out what USDA is doing in Mexico. Because they're not real transparent in their dialogue at nation-to-nation level, and SCARPA at the USDA level, which is SCARPA's USDA equivalent. They're not always real transparent about what's going on, what's being considered. So the best thing about this meeting is we go there to learn what's happening, what our government's telling their government. I know it sounds crazy, but this is a very important process with very important topics. The biggest issues right now are USDA and SCARPA are trying to work through regionalization concepts where Mexican states as groups are certified for TB status rather than individually. I don't see that the Mexican states really think this is too much of a good idea. I don't really think it's a good idea because it's going to make it harder to assess. You could have a good state and a really bad state, you average them together and they're okay, and so their status is higher than it should be for the state that's got infrastructure or disease problems. But I think USDA likes it for a number of reasons. Once it makes them do less reviews and it's cheaper, and it's just on paper simpler, but in truth it's more complicated because it would be like lumping Texas and New Mexico together and saying, okay, you guys are now a region, you have to do whatever you do together. And obviously that doesn't, y'all wouldn't always like that. And Mexican states don't either. So there's some real growing pains with this. And so we need to stay closely involved. There is still some violence going on in certain states. We do have the opportunity to participate in these TV reviews. Dr. Miller, our Beeville Regional Director, is going to Durango in July, I think. This is a state that's been off limits for about 5 years. And I want to give Dr. Miller credit and kudos for volunteering to go down there. The State Department assesses whether it's safe or not to go, and they say it's now safe. There's about 3 or 4 of us that sometimes will go if we have the time, and so we've added a new folks. I think it's important we have a presence. I really think it's important that we're at all the reviews along the border with Texas. With that said, they just held a Chihuahua. We were reviewing it, and they didn't tell us really. They invited us in January, and we said, okay, let us know. And the next thing we knew, it was over, and we weren't invited. So I know Dr. Schwartz and I both expressed our concern and our displeasure that the USDA held us a TV review with the border state of Texas and forgot to tell us. And that was a paper review done because of safety issues there, and we're going to have to watch that very closely, what they come out with, because I don't know how you can do a good review without going to visit the state. Wheela's a big importer in the United States, and obviously an important trade partner with Texas and the United States. So we need to, I just want to make sure that the right decision is made, wherever that is. The transparency is my concern. It's not really a people issue, it's a process issue. It's a philosophical issue. Sometimes USDA doesn't feel they should share what they consider confidential information. I've actually been on reviews with other countries and states where I didn't even get to see the final result without really insisting. So this is something that I'm going to continue to work on, making sure we know what's going on between Mexico and the U.S. and what's related to cattle imports. The future of that committee is, I think it's in transition here. 20 years ago, this committee was an industry-driven initiative, and industries themselves, industry partners, so in Texas, TSRA, Farm Bureau, ICA, those folks were leaders in insisting on improvement for Mexican animal health certifications. At some point, the USDA kind of came in and took over, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes not, but it's now become a SAGARPA USDA process. And I think it's real important that the industry get back involved. And the state vets, the Animal Health Commission is part of the industry in this concept. The state vets have one vote. There's 4 of us, and we get one elected vote. So it should not be a government-run process. And that committee is searching for leadership right now. We're searching for leaders that are not government employees and need more industry involvement. And I think it's important that the Animal Health Commission stay and our stakeholders stay committed and plugged into this, or we might not like all the trade things that come along otherwise. Any questions so far? Yes, sir.
You said that the message that the legislature was really about border security. Could you explain that a little bit?
I think, what our message was that border violence and border issues were affecting animal health as well as people health, and animal security as well as people security. And our message was that we needed the infrastructure in place to process the legal movement of animals. We're thinking about things like our temporary inspection stations that are on the Texas side due to violence. We needed the infrastructure in place to interdict illegal movements, whether they were intentional smuggling, which happens, or they were accidental wandering of animals across, again, where border violence affected ranching operations on both sides, and maybe folks are no longer there, no longer that interested in their livestock because they're either gone or they have other business interests that are more important to them. And so our point was that animal border security as related to animal health and diseases was an issue, and we were ready to solve that issue if we had the resources in place to do so. And that was our message. And it made sense, it was the truth, and it was accepted, and I think that was part of the reason why it appears that we're going to have a favorable budget outcome. Just we're part of the team. I mean, you can look around and you can see where we're partnering with Border Patrol and all kinds of initiatives. We're partnering with other federal governments. The federal government is supposed to protect the border. In this case, for lots of reasons, that's not always the case, and so we're the backup, and so we're the protection for the Texas livestock industry. You can see from our press releases and all the things that we've done where we're helping USDA catch cattle, catch animals, wildlife, whatever, and partner on those issues on the border. And that was my message. It's border security for animal health is legitimate, and we're the agency to do it. We just need some more things to get it done properly. That was my message. And it was well received. So treatment analysis. So I've already mentioned 3 rules for proposal day as a result of the working group: the virgin status for in-state and out-of-state, and also the defense line adjacents. There were a number of issues that were on that agenda. We met for about 3 hours, I guess, and the harmonization, as I mentioned, the state vets are trying to do a better job of helping producers move animals interstate without a lot of confusion. And the 3 things that we're trying to do is get a 60-day test of validity, have everyone accept the PCR test as a valid test, and standardize the virgin's age at 18 months. I just gave this presentation at the Southern Animal Health meeting last week in Florida, and those guys are all over the board. They're new at it. Some of them have no rules. Some of them have no entry requirements for trick. And my message to them was at least start with interstate entry rules and standardize them so our producers can move product as safely as possible. In Alabama, don't require culture any longer. Take the PCR. That's the perfect example. With that one state, it's not one of the United States, to go to Alabama, you have to have culture and a PCR, 2 separate tests, 2 separate processes. And Dr. Fraser said, yeah, he's looking into it. So I think this is really on behalf of our industry that we're pushing this. Dr. Eric Rowe was here from A&M. He's been a leader over there and doing some research on both vaccine and collection studies related to trick and bulls. And we committed, Animal Health Commission is committed to help them continue to do that research. And the easiest way is going to be for us to work with them on feed costs for the bulls. We obviously already inspect them. Some of these bulls have been infected and they're studying them, doing different things. Just want to let you know that I've committed to agency to work with Texas A&M on trick research initiatives. And if they need help with paying for it, it's in our best interest to do that. I have not received any more information since that. I just committed that we would work with them. They are good partners. The lab, and Dr. Hughes Garza will give you a lab update in a minute, but our lab will be up and running the PCR test very soon. PCR technology is cutting edge. It's a DNA, it's a real software computer tries to kind of put a jigsaw puzzle together, and we can figure out, put the pieces together, and they'll say, well, since these pieces all fit, this must be trick, or this must be AI. It's a new technology for testing in our lab. We're excited that our lab is up and running now on the final stages of having that ability, whether it's for coronavirus and swine or avian influenza or chicken bull, whatever. We're going to work through when it's appropriate for us to use this technology for regulatory issues. So we're proud that our NALM lab is up and running with the cutting edge technology. We're not sure how we're going to use it with Trick, and there's going to be a working group, the veterinarian industry in Texas. We're going to have to sit down with the vet industry and figure out if you pass the Trick adjacent testing rule. Sometimes the people are not going to have a veterinarian, and the veterinarian needs to take the sample. And sometimes there may be a vet that doesn't want to do it. So we're going to work through the vet industry, and Dr. Vickers, I hope you can be a part of that. And I just realized we're at the same time. Well, anyway, so we're going to work with the vet industry on when it's appropriate for the Animal Health Commission to do the test versus a private practitioner. And it's, in my mind, what would you call it? Affidavit of hardship. I don't know if that's what we call it, but it'll be a decision tree where we work through some very simple questions that our regional veterinarians, when they're working on the list of neighbors, will contact that neighbor and work through this list. The first question, obviously, is do you have a veterinarian? Just cover something that simple, and then work through that. But you can all envision situations where, for lots of different reasons, either there is no vet, or the vet there is not going to do their work for any amount of money, or they don't like the vet, or whatever. The complicating part of this, and Mary Gann can give you this update when she gets up there, it looks like we're not going to have the authority to charge a fee for most things after this session is over, other than maybe health certificates and poultry registration. So if that's the case, and we are testing bulls, we're going to be doing it for free. I'm not worried about the budget part, but that complicates the dynamic between a person that wants to have a free test or not a free test. They may not want to do it to start with. So interesting dilemma for us. This is the first regulatory program that I can think of where a vet had to do the test, and so because it's not a blood test, it's more complicated. Maybe what we can do at the next commission meeting, if y'all would like, is about a 3-minute video on what it means to collect the bull for Trick, how to do it. If you're not familiar with it, maybe we can show that at the next commission meeting, just give you a feel. It's a little more sophisticated test than just getting some blood. And you can see there, continue to exempt bison and decided not to let reactor bulls go to feedlots. And the working group also just punted the female cattle down the road. I think they'll continue to punt the female cattle down the road for a while. That's my recommendation anyway. Let some other states figure out how to do that. And there are a number of states now with strict regulations related to open cows, female cows. So you've got both interstate entry issues. You also have issues, well, if you know you have trick and you're dealing with bulls, and you have open cows, should we let them go to a market and be bought by someone else? We get into some ethical issues, some scientific issues, and I don't think the Texas industry is not ready for all that yet. So I think this is long term. This is probably going to be on the agenda for 3 or 4 years before anything's done. Commissioner Locke, you may want to add something there, but I just put it on here, letting you know this working group is really thinking through all the easy stuff and the hard stuff, and continuing to evaluate what's appropriate for Texas. It's very well represented, and the process is going well. As I said, it's their 6th time, so everyone kind of knows how to do it. And again, Commissioner Bach, if you'd like to say something, you were the leader of that group, and I'll yield to you. Thoughts on Trick?
Thank you. All I can say is you covered it very well. We have a working group that pretty well covers the spectrum of the industry. We need some wonderful input. All that's very much appreciated. That group does a great job.
One thing in Mexico requires a female to be tested. So I don't know if you're aware of that.
How do you test a female?
They could go into the vagina, take a little screen.
Culture?
It's not easy, but yeah, they do a trick test on the female.
Even young people.
Well, I wouldn't recommend we necessarily follow
Maybe
Mexico's
that's a long time.
rules for
I mean,
most
they
things.
required that a long time ago.
Mexico, New Mexico.
Old Mexico, right? Is it Old Mexico or New Mexico? Old Mexico, yeah, Old Mexico. I have no comment. I would deal with the working group. I just don't know how we can deal with it. There's not enough, Texas is too big, too many cattle. Let's let some other states figure out some good ideas, and we can put our foot in that water slowly over years. But there has to be a better test for us to make a lot more progress.
I got Gary Warner's email. I don't see any of that. I mean, down there, people bring them in, they want to get them tested. I don't care if they've got 10 cows, 3 cows, or 3,000. I haven't seen any issues.
Okay, good. I'll be glad to talk to you offline.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just.
Pyroclasmosis, I think the good news is we finally found a county that didn't have pyro in a horse. And we can't stop now. You know, the good thing about pyro is when we test the county, remove reactors, the ticks that carry that, within a year will self-clean themselves up. And so what we're basically doing systematically is clearing South Texas of a foreign animal disease that has established itself in our pastures. And so I'm really happy that we didn't find any reactors in Brooks. And I want to thank the veterinarians and the horse owners, and especially Dr. Vickers, for your support and your hospitality, and letting us put our trailer in your clinic, our staging trailer. And there may be a handful left to test. I'm not sure how many horses went, a handful, but tested about 1,000 horses and finding any keys and where to go next. And we're going to have to, you know, in light of just all the things that's going on, it's always just coin toss. I just threw down some names. We are maybe Lower Jim Wells or Willisey or Cameron. And you think, well, why would we try and jump into Cameron? Because we already know every horse in that part of the county. They're there. We know where they are. We know who owns them. We know where they live. And so we're kind of in a trap where there's too much to do it. But on the other hand, we're crazy not to do it because we know they're there and we just get it over with. But Cameron County, we're going to find pyroclasmosis. And it's going to be very difficult. And I think we need more resources. So I don't know. We'll probably just worry about this in the fall instead of now we're thinking where we're going next.
I just wanted to make a comment and tell the commission, I got to see our personnel down in Brooks County work through that whole testing process, and I was really impressed. A lot of times I leave the clinic at 7:30 in the evening, and animal health employees are over there at that trailer finishing up. I leave before them on their daily activities. And those guys, you know, they made trips around when they got through testing all the big areas and stuff. They actually tested a lot of people I thought were going to get in some trouble, but you know, they managed to get through it. People were very grateful that they came back and talked to them and got those animals tested. Detectives, I've never seen a detective work those guys have done. I mean, they went to the courthouse, found out where certain pieces of property were that had horses on it, followed up on it, looked up and found the owners and got those horses tested. So I just wanted to tell Dr. Ellis, from my standpoint, I thought that they worked very professional. They worked long hours and did a hell of a job.
Thank you, sir. And of course, there were USDA folks that were full partners of this as well.
Yeah.
So we tend to I just lump them in my mind. We're all on the same team, but
I was really impressed with the professionalism and what they did. So, and everybody's happy. The whole county turned out negative. So,
thank you again for your
I
hosting our trailer and our people. Victor stomatitis, we had the largest outbreak in history last year. It's a disease causes blisters on the mouths and hoofs. We've already had 2 cases just this year. The good news is we just released those yesterday, maybe, or this week. There's another one pending. Andy, you gonna talk about another? I think whether we have another one or not, I think just the concept is that it's that time of the year. Our outreach and our messaging from public information, we're going to be messages about it. It affects our ability to move animals, especially horses, interstate as well as internationally. Canada always gives U.S. trouble when there's VS. And so we're working through the normal process of dealing with these infected herds, which are usually infected through insect vectors. And there are new policies, again, to work through to make some things easier recommended. And we're obviously going to jump on that. 21-day quarantine is now 14 14 days. And we've got the rural proposal I've already talked about. But and again, our lab in Austin has asked USDA to give us permission to run the BS test. They've kind of micromanaged that in the past, made it go to Ames, Iowa. And we are hopeful that by the end of June, we'll have the ability for regulatory work for us to run our own tests instead of sending it off to another lab. And, so we're working for that. Cattle fever ticks. The good news is we think the vaccine, the last thing that had to be done with the vaccine was the safety trial that was managed by Dr. Van Bacher at USDA earlier this year on 2 ranches in South Texas is over, and that data has been submitted to the Center for Veterinary Biologics, which is a USDA division, I guess, that will make a final decision on whether the vaccine is okay to use in this case. I guess a conditional license down there. If that's done, the company that makes it said it'll take about 60 days to make it. And so this fall, again, which the timing's good because we need some more folks along the river, the timing will be good. We'll be able to work with our USDA partners to figure, and the cattle industry to figure out how to get the vaccine in cattle in the systematic zone, as well as the obvious ongoing responsibilities for inspection, annual inspection. And so that's the good news. The bad news is Cameron County. Y'all can see the map up there. There are 2 maps. I think the one on the left, I would point out to you that the issue there is the things in pink. Those are wildlife refuges. You can see a substantial amount of this blanket quarantine is under U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Texas Parks and Wildlife to a small degree authority. And there's no cattle for the most part on those places. And there are wildlife, and there are not any good treatment options right now for various reasons for the white-tailed deer or the nilgai. So if you're a cattle person in there along those wildlife refuges, you can see our challenge. And I think the yellow, are those adjacents on that map? Yellow are adjacent to affected herds. Basically, all the wildlife refuges are infested. And then there's some of that pink that are cattle ranches, but it's going to be a long haul. And I think what we're going to have to take a look at eventually is, can we manage our way out of this as a temporary zone, or do we make this a permanent zone? I don't know. I'm not going to make a recommendation or even a yes yet, but running an instant command post and rotating folks through there is unsustainable forever. It's not a good idea to do it forever. If we can get our way out of this in 2 or 3 years, it's better than coming back and expanding a permanent quarantine zone, imposing restrictions on these people for eternity, which could affect their livelihood and their life value of the land, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to have to take a look at that. With that said, I am not comfortable. I am not going to walk away from these folks in this free zone and just let it be business as usual. The Animal Health Commission is going to stay involved to make sure that folks that don't normally deal with the regulatory disease program are completely serviced from an information standpoint to a quality of process standpoint to a understanding and a business continuity standpoint. So this is a true partnership, in my opinion, with Animal Health Commission and USDA Veterinary Services, and so it's very important that we stay plugged in until we decide what to do long term. We're going to have an Animal Health Commission. We'll have a strong presence in there to help the public manage all the issues. Because, as I said earlier, they're not used to doing it. They're not used to have to ask permission to go to sell one. You call in advance and say, can I make an appointment to get my cows scratched so that I can go sell them at Edinburgh or Alice or wherever. So that kind of thing there, yeah. So those kinds of things, we've got to give the customer, in this case the public, the superior customer service. So we can do that. The wild card, the bubble up on top is Willacy County, and we're going to, just now getting into the tick season. Ticks are dormant in the winter, and they blossom in the spring and summer like weeds. And so our goal right now is to make sure that we've gotten everyone scratched at least once, and so we can make a final decision on whether we expand this up into the Willacy County area. There are infested premises up there, and it's just a balancing act between the increased oversight, cost, support, that demand of a new zone versus working with individual producers. producers. And we'll make that decision this summer. It's my intention probably to hold a public meeting here in late summer, and just take input, take suggestions. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And so that's going to be one thing we're going to do. Because that'll be almost a year. We'll be in this almost a year by then. So I want to thank USDA for they were able to award us some cooperative funds for the tip work. We have not billed for all of it yet, and it actually carries on into the fall in the next fiscal year, I think. But we will bill them as appropriate and drawing down that money, thank them for that support. The whitetail deer and the nilgai issues are significant. I'm going to show you at the end of my talk about 3-minute PowerPoint on our nilgai researches to let you see what we're doing down there with some partners. The biggest concern that I have personally, and maybe Dr. Hazel can address it in her talk, is the leadership of the cattle feeder tip eradication program is in a flux for a number of reasons. You see there, the Texas director for the last 45 years retired, the national director has transferred. There are internal challenges for hiring and replacing folks in USDA that are not any person's fault. It's a process issue, but it's slowing down our ability to rehire and stay fully funded and fully manned. And so I have some strong concerns with training. They have hired a number of new folks, and there needs to be someone to train them. And when the leadership's in a flux and the leadership's new, it's concerned to have folks out there that are just not fully trained and they're interacting with the public every day. So that's our challenge, Dr. Hazel and I are going to work on making sure we provide the infrastructure to manage this, not only in the system, not only in the temporary, but in the quarantine zone all the way from Del Rio to Brownsville. The TB situation in the Panhandle is getting more complex, and I'm going to let Dr. Swartz talk to y'all mainly about it. He's our state ethic and he's smarter than me and stuff like this, but our industry, we have a very dynamic and strong dairy industry in Texas. And a lot of folks want to bring their dairy cows and go into business in Texas, and that's all good, but it's, when there's a disease trace, what you're looking for in movements, it's a challenge to our staff. Kind of like in the audit committee this morning, the issue with dairy permits. We're going to have to hire some more. We're going to put some more people in the Panhandle. Hopefully now we have the budget to do that. And so we have to ramp up. There's probably 10 dairies to test this summer, not counting calf ranges or dairy or heifer ranges. Just to give you an example of what that is, next week we're going to test one of the infected dairies that we think we might get released in about 6 months. It only had one reactor on it. The Region 1 management asked for 7 3-man teams, 7 veterinarians, and 14 HTs, plus some support staff just to keep existence, equipment, and all that. And so 7 veterinarians and 14 folks. And so we're bringing them from all over the state. And with our USDA issues of avian influenza, most of them are either gone to another state or just got back from another state. And so our challenge, we still have a resource issue there, and we're working closely, but I couldn't ask for better support from the Texas Dairy Industry Association Dairymen. We're doing our best to manage a difficult thing. We know we have a third dairy infected that's not related to the other 2. We don't know where it's at yet, so I'll let Dr. Swartz talk about it. It's the United States dairy industry has a TB problem right now. Obviously, it's different things in different regions, but this is not Texas' fault. It's not anyone's fault. It is a reflection of an interstate system of movement. And we feed many, many dairy cattle from other states and send them home, and we have a lot of dairies that are moving into Texas, so that complicates. I think the biggest concern I've got, and Dr. Hazel I know is working on it as best she can, but just the indemnity issues for reactor cows. USDA pays that. They pay that money. We don't have to pay. In fact, actually brought up, thought, well, if I help you pay, then can we get these cattle gone? Because if there's a dispute between the dairyman as to what he thinks his animal's worth and what USDA says it's worth, organic cattle are really one of our biggest issues right now. USDA doesn't really have a good system to evaluate what's an organic dairy cow worth. It's worth more than normal, I can tell you that much. We have some situations where we need to retest the dairy. It's time to retest them, and the reactors are still standing there because they can't agree in price. And I actually didn't want to have offered to help put put in some state money, but it doesn't fix the situation. Because if we put in state money, then the USDA just lowers their amount the same, because they think it's worth this much. So maybe Dr. Hazel can tell y'all how she's working on that. But I know it's frustrating to all of us, it's not USDA's people's fault. It's a process of evaluating the value of cattle at the national level this year. But it's complicating our ability to fight this disease because we can't get the reactors going. Avian influenza, we don't have it in Texas, thank goodness. We're working closely with our industry. We met with the Texas Poultry Federation in April and went over the state response plan. Commissioner Simmons was there, and we are fully engaged with our Texas poultry industry more than we've ever been before as far as biosecurity discussion, national talks, state talks, working closely with the organic poultry industry on some recommendations they need from the state vet to keep them from having to turn the birds outside. The threat is wild birds first and foremost, and secondly, there is some lateral transfer of biosecurity breaks between some commercial folks. But I've spent more time on poultry issues than any other thing in the last couple of months, let's be honest with you. And our concern is that when the migratory birds come back south in the fall, that they can bring this virus back. And it's killing turkeys and chickens in high numbers very quickly. So quickly, the USDA changed their indemnity process because if they messed around a day or two, there's nothing left to indemnify, and they couldn't buy dead chickens. So they've actually really done a good job on the poultry side of making sure they're taking care of the producers. But some of these egg layers, Iowa's got some 4 million head egg layers that are infected. It's just the physical process of removing 4 million chickens from cages. If they're on the ground as broilers, you can deal with them in groups a lot easier. But when they're in cages 2 or 3 stories tall and higher than your head, it will take months for those folks to just clean out one infected premise and then deal with all the things, not to count the egg part, which is another complication. So Big Thankful's not here. We are watching migratory flyways, and we're watching biosecurity and outreach messaging. We're going to continue to push that, as is the Texas Poultry Federation. And we'll continue to harden our response concepts and our plans. And Dr. Schwartz may have more information. And I think Dr. Hazel, who you're in Missouri, right? Minnesota. She may want to tell you the war story when she comes up. I'll wrap up by just saying, the summer's going to be busy. This is when all the stakeholders have meetings, and we're committed to trying to go to as many of those as we can. I can't go to all of them. I'm going to go to a lot of them. Man, if you want to pass those 3 pamphlets out right there under my phone, just hand them to Mr. Locke. One of the things I was able to go, one of the 4 state vets, I went to an international screwer meeting a few weeks ago in Panama, and USDA is looking at their future strategy for screwworms. And to me, Mexico's free, Central America's free. There's 1 plant left in Panama, and they're actually dropping flies in Colombia right now. The game changer for me is the Caribbean and Cuba. Cuba has screwworms. We're going to normalize trade. It looks like Cuba, some other countries have screwworms. They have fever ticks and a lot of other things. And so it's, my message as one of the state vets representing this Animal Health Association and Health Commission, USDA, was don't cut the funding of this program just because we pushed it down to the edge of South America, because it's still in the Caribbean. The interesting thing was we were there for Central American countries. The Caribbean countries are a different region, so they weren't there. And so I would just encourage y'all all to watch the Cuba situation closely, because they have basically almost every disease we're concerned about in high numbers. And so the opportunities are going to be there for us to learn and to help and enhance trade, but we're going to have some strategies to do that. I'll try to make as many summer meetings as I can. If I'm not there, one of my other staff will be there, and you can see just some of my personal stuff that I'll be on there. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. There was some list of approved waivers: 4 trick, 1 brucellosis, and a bongo, and avian influenza. I'll let some eggs come in. I'll let some birds enter with a 96-hour test instead of 72 once. Tell them not to ever do it again because they have a trucking issue. So we're requiring a test. One of the things we did is Texas is requiring a test of all birds entering except maybe the little bitty baby chicks within 72 hours of entry. And I've actually taken some heat over that, truthfully, from some other state vets, but not from the states that have poultry industries. The states that don't have much of the poultry industry, they've been fairly critical. But I think we worked, Commissioner Simmons and myself and the Poultry Federation folks, we talked about it. We worked with A&M. A&M is our good partner in poultry, both at the diagnostic lab and poultry science department. It's the right thing to do for Texas. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. A lot going on right now. I'm proud to be here. I'm really proud of how we came out of the session. It's a reflection of stakeholders and y'all's good hard work and support and my staff.
Dr. Ellis, I would like to thank y'all, the whole staff of the Animal Health Commission and you and Dr. Lawrence and everybody, all the vets that's out there every day. And I know it's been when we've got 46 million birds right now that's been destroyed, it's been infected. So throughout the country and Texas right now, it's, I always said it's not, we haven't got it yet, but it's just a matter of when. And during the hot summer, which we're getting into, is our benefit that coming up this winter with this flyway and all these ducks and geese and everything, we could very well be facing this again. But I do want to thank you, and we've still got a lot of areas to take care of, make sure that we keep it out. Appreciate all the work that y'all done.
Thank you, sir.
Very much.
I want to finish up my report by just showing you a few pictures of the nilgai collaring project. Animal Health Commission is partnering with these folks. And we realize nilgai are spreading fever ticks. We know they're spreading it. They're not the only reason, though. They're probably getting too much blame, to be quite honest. If you told me to pick between white-tailed deer and nilgai, I'd say white-tailed deer are much more of an issue to us, truthfully, than nilgai. But here's our partners, what we're trying to do is just learn about nilgai. We know in some parts of South Texas there are as many as 30 per square mile. I think from probably if you drew a line from Laredo to Corpus, probably everywhere south of there, either they have nilgai in their place or they're close. They're an emerging species. They're not native to Texas. And you can see here what we partnered with. Mainly, A&M Kingsville is going to use their students to do the legwork. And East Wildlife Foundation worked with us on finding some nilgai to collar, and then USDA folks and Animal Health Commission are involved with mainly the funding part of it. I just want to show you some pictures of what we did. And this is Willacy County. It's just to the north of Cameron, and it's one of the counties, as I mentioned, we're looking at considering whether to expand our blanket quarantine, where we collared these animals up by Fort Mansfield. Not only they're not known to be any ticks there, the ranch had scratched the cattle prior to this, so there are no fever ticks on this place. I just want to show you the pictures of how we did it, what they did. Really, Animal Health Commission did put some money into this, though. So they used helicopters to net, and they shot these nets with like a gun with shooting blanks, and they put these nets. You can see there they're about 10 or 12 feet square. And they put them up in these tubes, and then they would fly around. And it didn't take long to find nilgai. When they saw one there, they would shoot that net on it, and then the rodeo was on. And then these guys, these four-wheeler cowboys, would go wrestle these nilgai. And the males weigh probably 500 pounds, so 400 to 500, 600 pounds. Females are smaller, and they're different colors. The males are darker, the females are more like a deer color. And you can see the terrain here. We weren't very far from the coast, to be quite honest, and it took a lot of work. So they get the net off and get these guys tied up, and then the A&M Kingsville folks did some basic sample collection on them, looked at their body condition, their teeth, how they are, et cetera, things like that. But what we did was we put radio collars. And here's a picture where they're putting these satellite collars on where these can be tracked. And there were 15 they're going to beep once an hour to show you their movements, and the other ones I think were every 12 hours. And they're going to stay on about 2 years. They also put an ID on them. They put these flap tags, 2 visible tags in theory, so that the hunters wouldn't shoot them. We would like to keep these 30 nilgai alive as long as we can to see, the reason we're doing this is to see how far they roam. What are their barriers? I can tell you fences aren't a barrier. I can tell you that right now. And we believe they would go up to 25 miles. We believe that what started as a local problem down by the Brownsville Ship Channel, of nilgai running back and forth into Mexico, they went south, and they came north, they got those other wildlife refuges. We believe that's how we got the ticks up north. That's a pretty solid animal right there. And I don't have the mapping stuff to show you. I'm sure there's gonna be a paper written and all those kinds of things. But this animal was 9 miles away the next day. And he never stopped running, he just took off. He was not happy. And then 2 days later, 2 females joined him. The first day they stayed around, the next day they went with him. They went to where he was at. So that would tell me this is not where he might not have lived there. He might have just been visiting. So he went home. He won't ever come back, I guess. But just the pictures. This is my favorite picture. Just the look, just the action, the guys, and that's a female, and you can see that they're flat tagged and identified. Those suckers, they ran every which way after they were caught.
That was a brave photographer, because you know which way that last one was going.
Well, I took most of these pictures, but I didn't take that picture. That picture should win some kind of award. I took that one. It doesn't look as dangerous though, does it? I actually took that. Huh? No. They netted them, tied them up, put the collar on them, let them go. Basically, that's what it was. We're going to watch these for 2 years, and we'll have a better feel as a community as to the migration or the movement, not migration, just the normal movement patterns of these animals that are not native to Texas and are a natural host for the cattle fever tick. And they are a problem for us. And I just want to show you all that. I'll stop there. The Animal Health Commission is a partner. We put in some money, and I just want y'all to be aware of what we're doing. And our good partners are all of those wildlife and academic and other governments. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman. That's my report.
I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that you started off with at the beginning of your presentation and add my comments about I've always been appreciative to our stakeholders, all of the groups that we regulate. They were such a help this legislative session. And you guys know who you are, and Ag Council, and they've been very, very, very helpful and supportive of this agency. And you've got my full gratitude for the work all y'all did. And it made the hours and days I spent here in Austin helpful to have people like that behind you and giving us advice. And Mary, you did a wonderful job. It was great to spend time with you, even though you could see out my frustration certain times, feeling like the leaders didn't really pay much attention to our small agency, but you did great work. So I appreciate that too. And with that, are there any other questions for Dr. Ellis? If not, could I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the action on the period from January 28, 2015 through June 9, 2015.
Second. Been moved and seconded that we approve item 3, actions of the executive director. Is there any discussion? None, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And speaking of Mary, you are up next. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. And I too have to start off with echoing my appreciation. This was a very, the session was leading into it. The one word I could describe it was uncertainty, because we had a transition of state leadership and new legislatures that we haven't seen in recent history. And with those new state elected officials and new representatives, you get a whole new staff. And so there were a lot of fresh faces and a lot of uncertainty, especially for me. And so I am beyond grateful to the stakeholders, to the commissioners, to our executive staff, Dr. Ellis, Larissa, Steve, and Megan, but especially those stakeholders for their time and effort, and especially their guidance with a session that we didn't know what was to come with all the issues that were before it. I'm gonna start off with some statistics from this legislative session, just so you have an idea of how optimistic our items are looking. We can't say with certainty yet, because on June 21st, we can have an idea. Or we'll have an idea of what the percentages, the final passage is. That's when the governor has to veto, sign a bill, or allow it to go into law without a signature. So in the Senate, there were 2,069 bills filed, 504 of those passed. In the House, there were 4,207 bills filed, 818 of those passed. We had 2 bills that we knew, and we worked with stakeholders during the summer and in the fall, that we thought it was an initiative, an important one for our mission. And both of those bills were filed, and at this point they have passed, and at the governor's desk, one of them has been approved, so it will go into effect and be law September 1st. So we're at 50%, even one bill still sitting there. In addition to those bills, we had several legislative initiatives, primarily dealing with funding. 7 of those were identified prior to session. 5 of the 9 passed outright. 2, there was some, it was granted in part, and then 2 were not granted, but I think y'all might be relieved about one of those bills that you don't have to, or one of those, the fee authority issue is something that we'll discuss shortly. As Dr. Ellis discussed, border animal health security was our big item. It was a request of $4 million, and that request was granted in its entirety. Our feral swine disease surveillance and response was a $600,000 request, also granted in its entirety. And the third item that was granted in its entirety, that was an exceptional item 1, is our Project 1 CAPS request. That is a new initiative by the comptroller. It's a centralized accounting payroll system, and so we need some help implementing that. And many state agencies requested that, and we were one of the ones that got our full request granted. A request that was granted in part was our complete vehicle replacement. We have 40% of our fleet at 130,000 miles. Half of those have over 200,000 miles. And so we have requested $800,000 to put again into that mileage issue. Unfortunately, only a part of that was granted. And so stakeholders, be ready for me to come back to the next session with that as an item on my agenda, because only 223,000 was granted in that exceptional item request. The next item that we had on our agenda, just because it affects our revenue, was for our stakeholders and for the legislatures to consider our fee revenue. A portion of our fee revenue, 161.60 B and C, will expire in September 2015. And so we asked for them to either extend that fee authority or to dedicate funds to our general revenue to cover that law. It was a $246,000 request that was not granted. And so the good news of that is that you as commissioners don't have to worry about assessing an authority of fees. We have 2 separate fee authorities, one for certificate of veterinary inspection, one for fowl registration, and then we do have some existing authority for some inspections. The next item that was granted in part was our ED salary. We had asked for an increase up to Group 5. They had allowed to the high of the Group 4 range, which is in the $165,000 range. They increased that to $136,000, which is a $13,000 increase from where we were. And then the last item that was not granted was our digital records management system, and that was trying to make our program records and processing of health certificates more efficient by using a program that would read those handwritten certificates and partially auto-generate the information into a database rather than having to do that manually. And we saw that growing in several departments, using HR, using in legal, but that wasn't received this session. So we'll keep that on our agenda, and it may come back before the next session. In addition to those 7 items, the 2 bills that passed are our Class C legislation. And if you'll flip in your binder with me, I've got the General Revenue Authority and your GAA on the first few pages. Then we'll talk about House Bill 2. Your bills are at the end. And so this is your next to last page, it's Senate Bill 970, Senator Perry carried this. Senator Representative Powell Cassell carried it in the House. I'm very proud of this bill. It was a bill that we had last session, and it did not make it. However, this session, it made it through both chambers with unanimous consent and was signed very quickly by the governor. And this allows us to deal with animals that are exposed to diseases, and for actually individuals that have animals that are exposed to diseases, and or animals that are subject to a testing requirement. Basically, what we've had is a gap in our authority. If you have a quarantine, an animal with a disease, and you quarantine it, and an individual moves that animal to a different location without notifying the commission, giving permission, that'd be a Class C misdemeanor. However, in our testing and our experiences, we might have and this happened, a vesicular stomatitis case. And you go out and you see the lesions and you take the test, but the tests aren't confirmed yet. And so we, as the animal health officials and protecting the trade that our stakeholders have, we do not issue a quarantine immediately because we have to report that up, and that could affect trade. So we issue a hold order while we're pending those tests. And what we found and what we have had on several occasions since I've been here is people move outside that hold order, they just disregard it. And last summer, a horse owner moved 2 infected BS horses to a pasture in an unaffected county. They were surrounded by beef cattle on one side and horses on the other, and changed their phone. So that was an example of what this authority will address. And when the facts show that that individual received notice and they know that they are under a restriction, that they too could be subject to criminal penalty. And it's not just a return of a fine, they could have some criminal sanction. First offense is a Class C misdemeanor, it's $500, it's the equivalent of a speeding ticket. A second offense, though, for those repeat offenders, we can get to a Class B. So that's what this legislation does. Again, unanimous consent in both chambers. The last bill that's out there, sitting on the governor's office, we'll talk about budget separately, is the equine infectious anemia bill, and it's actually related just to laboratories and individuals that are performing the EIA test. We've received some indication that our counterparts at USDA might be moving away from the inspection of those particular labs. We believe it's an extremely important program. It's been very successful in the state. I believe we had over 750 infected animals in the first year of the program, down to 10, but we have to remain vigilant because of our proximity, and the southern states in general do because of the proximity to Mexico. So this bill will allow us to continue making sure that the quality control in our laboratories exists in the event our federal counterparts do move away from that. And it's on the governor's desk, and so that's that 20-day deadline from June 3rd to December 1. So going back to the budget bills, House Bill 1, after our total requests for exceptional items in addition to the general appropriations that we had in 14-15, amounted to a request of $6,266,000. What was approved by both the House and Senate is a $4.8 million increase. And that amounts to about a 27% increase in our general revenue. And the biggest part of that is that we're going to be able to hire some folks and get reinforcement in the field to deal with these many disease issues that Dr. Ellis has mentioned and Dr. Schwartz will go into more detail about. A couple of issues that our stakeholders were instrumental in helping us resolve. You know, you have your legislative issues and agendas going in, but a session turns out you always have some issues that come up. And a couple of the issues were brought by the legislative, well, not an issue, but the Legislative Budget Board recommended that our FTEs, our full-time employees, count go from 161 to 150.5 in their recommendation. And this is during our TB outbreak and our fever tick response. They also, at the same time, recommended that our unexpended balance authority, which allows us to carry money from 1 year of the biennium into the next year, be done away with. And they did that for all state agencies across the board. That is where our stakeholders were instrumental in helping me explain how valuable our people are and how valuable the unexpended balance authority is. In fact, we had a supplemental funding request for $789,000. Had we not had UB Authority, that request would have been closer to $1.4 million because we were conservative and were able to bring $600,000 into 2015. And so it's very important with agencies, especially like Department of Health, State Services, Animal Health Commission, to have the flexibility to use funds for diseases that might be in the other part of your biennium. And so that authority was restored, and our FTE count was brought back up to 32 and 33 people, but from the 15 to 161, it's 22. In 16, there are an additional 23.2 FTEs, and in 17, there's an additional 24.2 FTEs. But I've got to note, one of those is the CAP individual, so we only get that FTE for 2 years. So on the supplemental bill that I just mentioned.
So Mary, so what's the number, 185?
Oh, excuse me.
What, just tell them the top, what we will be.
183.2 employees and 184.2 in sales.
Thank
Then the House Bill 2, which is our supplemental bill, that bill has been sent to the comptroller, who has to certify their funds to support that allocation. Has also now been sent to the governor. 188,000 of that request supports the cattle, or to repay the funds allocated for our cattle tuberculosis efforts, and 601,000 of that is for the fever sales. Then on House Bill 1, the 4.8 million, increase, that bill is currently at the comptroller certifying that the biennial revenue estimate would cover the cost of what the state's budget is for the next time. So again, thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your time during the session, and the stakeholders. It's always an honor, and I love my job because I think who I get to work with and the industries I get to serve, and just appreciate being able to serve in this role today. So, are there any questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Dr. Schwartz, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. During my report today, as always, it's my traditional is to start with tuberculosis because that's occupying a lot of our time right now. Just as a point of reference, I take this back to 2013, where we had 15 cases of tuberculosis that year. 13 of those were connected to Mexico origin feeder animals, either directly by ag or by the lot. And in that year, we had one steer that we were not able to find herd of origin at all because of lack of ID and feeder records. And then we had one domestic, what we believe is probably domestic beef cow that we were not able to find the source for that one also. So that moving forward then to last part of 2014 is relatively a quiet year compared to 2013. We had only one Mexico origin feeder case. That one was fairly large though because it was in consignment of 1,300 animals. So when we get one of these cases, we try to go back and retrace the animals and see where all those feeder animals were split, where they might have been grazed, and make sure that they're exposing our domestic cow to tuberculosis. So sometimes that's a bit difficult to do, but we do the best we can with the records that are available. Then the next, and this was a big one, in last fall, there was a Texas origin dairy cow found with tuberculosis at slaughter. And we traced back on that animal. And were traced to a dairy in Texas. There's no question we were in the right place. That same owner has actually 2 large dairies, and when we got in and tested those dairies, we found that they had tuberculosis, one more severely than the other. You see a lot of numbers there. I won't bore you by going into great detail there, but just to say we've investigated on how these dairies might have gotten tuberculosis. And in our mind, it's either it was brought down on a purchased addition, or it possibly could have been introduced by a dairy employee. Another thing to think about is exposure while the cattle are on the dairy. It turns out this dairy operator had purchased a feed yard during this process. After establishing these dairies, purchased his own feed yard and put some of the dairy heifers in that yard, and there were still Mexico origin animals in that yard. So in my mind, that's a likely source of introduction, although when we followed those animals to slaughter that were the inbred animals that were in that feed yard, when they went through the normal slaughter inspection, no TB was found. So either it wasn't there to begin with or it got missed on the slaughter inspection. So I guess that's a long way of saying we don't know exactly how TB is introduced in these two birds. USDA does a genetic analysis of the organism, of the actual bacteria that they culture from these cows, and then compares it to the genetic sequence of other strains that are in the database. And the closest relative that's in the database is, we're told, was probably branched off about 50 years ago. So we don't have any, it's not closely related to any dairy in California or Texas for that matter. The closest relative actually was the dairy strain that we had in 2004. So, but again, that was not a direct exposure to that dairy. It happened 50 years ago. So we're still working on that. So I'll just talk about these two herds for a bit that belong to the same owner. We do know that herd number 1 was built from largely the cattle that were moved from California. Those cattle were TB tested and they were moved to meet interstate movement requirements. So there's a chance though that they brought TB with them and they missed on the test. Test for sure. It was also was built partially from some dairy cattle purchased in Texas. We later put that herd of origin under quarantine for tuberculosis and it's been populated. That was the herd we had in 2009. We tested this dairy, herd number 1 in 2009. Got this, did not find TB. Plus, we compared the genetic fingerprint from that 09 dairy to the current one, and they're different. So we don't think TB was introduced from the purchases in Texas back in 09. Complicated. So I laid out some testing. We've been in this herd in November. I tested just over 10,000 head and had 520 total responders. By USDA standards now, that's definitely an infected herd, and we removed all 520 of those animals. So they all went for inspection. We diagnosed with tuberculosis in 160 of those animals. So it's, I guess, a low percentage overall, but it's more TB than I've seen in Texas dairy in my 25 years. So we tested the dairy again together with our fellow partners in February and found more powerful responders this time and about the same number of animals. So it looks like, just with 1 or 2 removal tests, we're not making progress in cleaning up this dairy. So USDA does a risk modeling procedure now where we plug in factors associated with characteristic of that herd, the number of responders they've had, the number of lesion animals, the whole population, and it does a calculation on how many removal tests would be needed to get the herd released. And at the time we did that modeling, we would have to test that herd 18 times every 2 months to completely get rid of tuberculosis. So that just, you turn the whole population of that dairy over to the USDA. Also weighs the expense of that because it's federal money that identifies these owners, and it's federal employees help with the TB testing, so it's an expensive thing. So our conclusion was to request indemnity money to populate this area. That's at Washington right now, and it looks like we're hearing that there might be a favorable response. They will come up with the money to populate that herd.
They've not started the population.
That's correct. We're still waiting to hear from on the CCC funds. It's a lot of money. This is a high producing dairy.
The market, the Florida cow market, quite a bit.
So the question is asked, what's the indemnity on a dairy cow? I mean, just the packer class, on one of those 1,800 pound cows, $1,800. But I mean, the dairy cow, the milking cow, she's probably 2,400. So there's a calculation made on what stage of lactation she's in. I mean, what lactation number she's in. And that's what, but this was a high producing dairy, about 80 8 pounds per cow.
One other question, did the health department finish testing the employees?
That has not been done. We work closely with them to try to get that done. It has to be on a voluntary basis. The State Department's health services can't afford to do it. So, they came in and tested and did, and there was some issues with the sample, so we had to go back in and try to smooth that over. The short answer is it's not been done yet. So, but we've worked with them to try to set up a location off-site, and the dairy is very supportive. They want to, between the two dairies, they've got about 100 employees. They're very supportive of getting those workers tested now, and again, after this infected dairy.
How's your factory population over here? Months, they've been there, the plan for the population to bring all those cows to market.
It's in the dairy's interest to get it as soon as, everything's approved, to get it done as quickly as possible, because their goal is to get back into production, to keep the money flowing. So we're trying to get everything in place ahead of time, set the value of the animals. USDA is actually hiring an appraiser, so they'll have somebody on site instead of going through this calculator bit. On 10,000 head of cattle, they can appraise the whole dairy. So that USDA is working on that. So once all those pieces are in place, they'll put out the bids for those animals, and it can go to whatever slaughter plant's interested in taking them. So it'll be just, I think the bids are going to be for the animals and the hauling, so that whoever slaughter plant gets that contract, will haul the animals themselves. So our hope is that once that is all in place, it will happen in a matter of weeks. Then the dairy will have to clean the pens, the water troughs, and stay vacant for 60 days.
Until that takes place, you can't, this case won't be closed, so you can't clean it up until then.
That's right. We sent in a review team. We actually got some national experts to team up with our folks to go out and take a look at that dairy to see what was going on, how the TB was spreading. And they made some recommendations. One, for example, take a hard look at the pasteurizer, because they're feeding waste milk to the calves. And it turns out the pasteurizer was not at the right temperature. It had a warning bell on it that if it was too cool, it would go off, and they just adjusted the bells. So the milk was not being pasteurized going to the calf. The other recommendation was to, like the feedback, when the lactating cows are fed a good ration, they make them produce 82 pounds of milk a day. But some of it is rejected, so they scrape all that up and fed it to the dry cows and heifers. So there's a chance that they were spreading TB back through saliva and all on that feed. So they recommended they change that practice. So there were some things that have been done on the dairy to try to stop the transmission of disease. Probably too far, the door's been open too long. So we do plan to test that dairy again before it's sent to, so that we know what to do with those animals. The powerful test negative animals could go through rigorous slaughter inspection, but the powerful positive animals are going to have to go just to rendering. And that's a lot of animals. But that's USDA has to completely identify the animal there. There's no salvage value out of that. So obviously, we like to keep that number smaller. Right now, they're still producing milk. That milk is going to powder milk production. It's not going to
We're looking at ways of buying for all this.
Okay, so that's herd number one. That's where it hit the most infection. Same owner, a herd slightly larger, geographically about 10 miles away. This is in the Panhandle of Texas, by the way. We tested that herd in November and found one animal with TB. It had actually been moved from herd number one to this herd just a few months prior. We got that animal out and the 180 other animals that had made that trip from herd one to herd two, and have tested the herd twice since then and have not found TB. But right now we're waiting, as Dr. Ellis mentioned, we're waiting on from the last herd test. I believe there were 27 colorful responders, and there's some negotiations on the value of those animals right now. We'd like to get them removed and test that herd again so we can get it on schedule for release. And Another TV situation, Dr. Ellis alluded to this, is that we may have another herd unrelated to these two dairies, another affected herd in the state. The reason I say that is we've had 5 different steers that have come through various feed yards and various lots to slaughter. 5 steers with Holstein steers with tuberculosis, and the genetic fingerprint of those 5 is identical, it matches. So that tells us they probably came from the same point exposure. The question is, what was that point exposure? Because we tested most of the dairy that the tags trace back to, and not diagnosed TB yet. So we're waiting to get some of those animals necropsied as well to make that diagnosis. So in the meantime, we're in the process of testing 8 other operations that might have contributed to those steers. So we're working hard to try to find the source of that. I'll move on now to brucellosis. Nothing earth-shattering there. We haven't had brucellosis diagnosed in cattle, Brucella abortus since 2011. I'd like to keep it that way. Trichomoniasis, Dr. Ellis just talked about the working group. So far this year, we've got 219 positive bulls out of about 14,000 tested. If you just do a raw percentage, that's about 1.5%, but I would just caution that it tends to be a lower percentage in the spring, and I'm not sure why that happens. So last year is about 2.4%, 2.45, and I would expect this year to be about that same, with all the numbers together. Cattle fever tick, Dr. Ellis mentioned the blanket quarantine area. We've got 21 infested premises under quarantine, 17 in Franklin County, 4 in Willis County. 6 of those premises, as Dr. Ellis said, are wildlife only. That's some refuge, or they don't have livestock at all. It's just the nilgai or white-tailed deer that are infested. We do traces out of these herds. We try to do follow-up on animals that were removed. They might have been carrying the ticks. We followed some of those animals to Clayburgh County and found out that they'd been on a property and then were moved. When we found them, checked caught up with them at the second property that had been moved. We did 2-mile circles, one where the cattle had been temporarily and where they were caught up with them. And we want to talk about that. What I'm alluding to is that where the cattle were temporarily, we're getting ready to do the final sweep, that 2-mile circle, and a tick was found that at least from the identification would indicate that's a fever tick, and that's in Clayburgh County. So it's, we're waiting on the official identification at the lab. So
We got about 140 acres
little ranchettes. So it seemed ridiculous to go out 2 miles and look at some cattle over and over again. But here it is, one year after those cattle came to that place, and we found what may have been one fever tick on the earth on the cow.
It's not been confirmed yet.
We'll see. Moving on to swine, no brucellosis infected herds so far this year. It's good. Pseudorabies has 2 herds. The SCCD, the swine enteric corona disease, porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, we still follow up on those, and we've had 1 new herd discovered so far this year. We just follow up to make sure that they're developing a herd plan. Equine, Dr. Ellis talked about the pyro testing, so we'll go into that. EIA, we had 2 cases so far this year. The vesicular stomatitis outbreak has been mentioned. We've had the 2 cases in El Paso County forces, and we were braced for another big outbreak like we had last year. But so far, I've got my fingers crossed, we haven't seen that escalate like we did last year. But, this is a part of the state we more expect it to happen than it did last year. But this awareness of the vesicular conditions makes people, well, the talk about the condition makes people more aware, and so a lot more conditions get reported. So we have a number of investigations going on around the state where cattle or horses have some vesicular condition or what looks like it could have been vesicular. So we're investigating those, but so far we haven't confirmed any of the positives, and I hope we get that right. Moving on to poultry, Dr. Gross touched on that as well. I'll just say we're braced for this. We're trying to be as ready as we can. We hope we don't have an outbreak in Texas, and knock on wood, it hasn't happened yet. This outbreak in the U.S. is huge. It started in December of last year. It's now gone to 20 states. A total of 10% of the laying operation, laying birds in the nation have been populated, died from the disease. So 10% of the egg supply is gone, and 7% of the turkey population is gone across the whole nation. So we hope the virus doesn't come back or continue to spread this year. It's obviously the question comes up: couldn't you vaccinate for this flu? There is a vaccine. They don't know how well it protects turkeys yet. But the issue with using the vaccine is some of our trading partners take issue with that. So if we started vaccinating against this disease, the trade would stop and for a time until they get a chance to assess what we're doing in the United States. So that nationwide, the decision has been made to not allow the use of vaccine right now. Moving on to service, Dr. Willis mentioned the CWD task force meeting in April with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and we talked about the finding this year of CWD and another animal in mule deer out in West Texas, and what that might do to the we've also had a number of questions lately about the official identification of deer in our status program. I think we're being addressed properly that it is okay to use a microchip as an official ID. It's okay to change out an RFID, a button tag, and replace it with an official microchip if the herd owner wants to do that. I think there's an interest in doing that on animals that would be released. Just wanted to touch on a few projects with animal disease traceability. We're developing together with legal procedures for approving new electronic CDI providers for our state. We want to make sure we get that right moving forward to help with some of those issues of data management that we touched on, that the audit found with that net tracking system. It will help us with that problem. We're looking at purchasing a subscription to statevet.com, and that's just a way to share information electronically between Texas and other states and get it in our database without having to re-enter that information. We're working with Global VetLink to post our Texas injury requirements on their website, and that would help us with compliance of subscribers of statevet.com. The Global VetLink. If they're issuing us a certificate on animals moving to Texas and our regulations are in here, there's a way to check that movement against our regulations. So that they're going to check the movement in the website. So we're working on that. We're also working with the feeding industry on an ultra high frequency tagging project. The biggest benefit of that particular kind of tag is it can be read from a greater distance than normal tags that regular low frequency tags. So we're working with them. There's a chance we could run animals 4 or 5 abreast down an alleyway and read all the tags as they go by. So we're working with the feeding industry on that project. And we continue to distribute the free tags to veterinarians and producers through the AgriLife and private veterinarians. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my report.
Any questions? Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Dr. Hazel, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Hazel, that's correct. Say it with Z.
Welcome, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. I can actually speak this time. So once again, thank you. And the side effect of following Andy. First of all, I'll mention HiPath AI, which, Andy, you took some of my numbers. But first to mention that is consuming most of the veterinary services time and employees. As Dr. Schwartz stated, there are 21 premises open last night. For 21 states, 227 premises, which constitutes 207 commercial and 20 backyard blocks. price-wise or indemnity-wise, cost-wise, indemnity and cost to the United States government, it's just almost reached $500 million, so $500 million for HIPAA AI, which we had no idea would ever reach this much. Which is another reason that our TV funds have been a little bit delayed in approval. I think they will be, it's moving forward, but it's been delayed a little bit. We're approaching the $500 million mark. I'd say we'll be there by the end of this week. The commercial depopulations, as Dr. Schwartz stated, turkey, 7.5 million in layers, chicken, pullets, 41.1 million birds. And for those of you that have not set foot on a commercial poultry premise, you need to. I was there in Minnesota earlier. It's a very daunting task when you see 4 to 6 rows of cages in a barn that holds about 100,000, 200,000 birds. Of course, just to get to those top layer cages is not an easy task in itself, let alone pull 5 birds out of one cage. So it's a very daunting, time-consuming task. It doesn't happen overnight. The interesting thing about it, when dealing with HIPAA AI, is that turkeys, of course, die. The minute they inhale, they die very quickly. Chickens are much more resistant to the HIPAA AI that is currently circulating. So when you walk into a barn, you can see the entire nature of the disease. You start at one end, and they're all dead, but as you move, you see the whole clinical signs and the progression of the disease. Which does help when you're studying the disease. It's very unfortunate, but it is interesting to see the process. The losses, as Dr. Schwartz mentioned, 3.12% of the U.S. annual turkey production and 7.36% of the average U.S. turkey inventory. Now, many have asked, what is to do with price of turkey? Because exports have been shut off, and we're not exporting turkey, we do have a higher supply in the U.S., which means that the price of turkey at this point should not change significantly. Unless the losses continue to increase. Now, it may change the price of table eggs, as many of you have heard, because of the decrease in our egg-bearer population, but not so much. And the broiler industry, fortunately, hasn't really been harmed so much by this. It's less than 0.01% of the broiler industry has been affected, which is good for those who work. As far as VS is concerned, as of June 3rd, we had 169 people deployed. And for those of you that know our agency, Veterinary Services, we're not a large agency. To have 300 of us basically in the field would be an overestimate at this point. Of the 169 people, about 51 are VMOs and 35 are AHPs. And we don't have that many VMOs in the field anymore, and it has affected Texas's ability to respond from Veterinary Services standpoint. Amongst that are the rest of the United States. It's just not Texas, it's all of us. Total deployments, and this is deployments of everybody, have been 662 deployments to HIPAA AI and 449 individuals, which is most of our agency. And it does not exclude anybody. As Dr. Ellison stated, I was there in Minnesota, and other ADs across the U.S. also will be deployed as well. So none of us are excluded from that deployment, which does affect our ability to perform my tasks here at home and do our jobs. The number deployed once have been 309 that have been deployed once, and 79 that have been deployed twice. Most of our employees here in Texas are just getting ready to go on their second round of deployment. And once again, that hasn't really excluded anybody. And so it's also including our tick force, which takes away a portion of them each month. The one thing that we have noticed about the HIPAA AI that has been a concern, and I'll mention this, you guys, Dr. Ellis mentioned too, is the biosecurity. We know that in Iowa, Minnesota, et cetera, biosecurity has been a primary concern, that it is spreading by wild birds. It's also spreading by ventilation and by termites, by people, trucks, trailers, employees, trash, any way possible. We talked about the swine industry and how they grasped, or that they took SECD and made it their own and found a way to help control it. And we really need the poultry industry to take this whole HIPAA AI situation and find a way to mitigate those risks. And so far, we can't say that that has happened to the effect that we need it to happen. And so we're very thankful that biosecurity in Texas is being hammered, basically have to be biosecurity. Because we're seeing it in Minnesota, we're seeing it in Iowa, you can track. You can actually do the math and you can track the next premise to be infected if you know the biosecurity of that plant or that owner. It needs to be addressed, and they know that, and they're working on it right now. But it has cost, it's cost many of these people their livelihood because of their lack of biosecurity, and they are aware of that. As Dr. Schwartz mentioned, vaccine, 60% effective in chickens. Turkeys, we don't even know, so it is being discouraged right now. That's the basics on that. We're hoping, this fall, we know we're at risk. We know biosecurity is being breached in Texas. The good thing about it, too, to help prepare us, is that BS is currently in the process of hiring about 100 new employees for basically high-path AI. They are trim employees, about 50% DMOs, 50% AHTs. They're being hired in the districts that are hit the hardest by high-path AI, which is District 3 to District 6. And their main focus is to work on high-path AI. So if we do have an outbreak in the fall, we'll be better prepared to deal with that outbreak. And not many of us will be as deployed as we are now. We'll be home to fight that battle.
Are those permanent, you lost with the 100 people that y'all are hiring, they get full-time?
They are term employees. They have a
Term
1-year
employees.
appointment.
So they're, okay.
They have a
So
1-year
they're
appointment.
temps,
Yeah, basically, they have a 1-year appointment with a 3-year renewal.
okay.
So if a permanent job were ever to come open, they would have to apply, but they're 1-year temps, essentially, yes. Correct. And FYI, that will be coming open next week, if anybody wants to for
Nobody,
So mentioned it, go into TICS, speaking of hiring then. So TICS, our assistant director position for TICS will be opening up on Monday, June 15th. And that will be a veterinary position, be a 13-14 within our agency. And we're really excited about that. It makes them another AD. So in District 4, we'll have an additional AD to help support the district, as well as to support that program as its own entity. Which will be the first time that program has been its entirely own entity supported by an AD. That's exactly what the program needs in our mind to bring it to the forefront. And we're excited about that. It'll be open for about a week, but it does close after the first 50 applicants. And in history, that has been up to a day and a half. Also on the TICS, of course, we're working on the CORAL recovery plan. This week, actually tonight, some of the APHIS safety group will be down to visit in Cameron County. They review our new CORAL recovery plan and how we're dealing with that. Hopefully that goes well. The vaccine is, as Dr. Ellis mentioned, hopefully this fall. And how we're going to use it, what will our method be? Dr. Balkins is working on that. The last thing I think I'd like to mention would be about TB. 1,176 head necropsied so far, with 340 head that had lesions. And as Dr. Schwartz stated, that's basically one of the highest infection rates we've ever seen in the US, especially for any of us that are currently living anyway. It's pretty amazing infection rate. The indemnity has passed our part of the agency. It's gone into the MRP program now, and then it goes into OMB, and then to the Secretary of Agriculture. It has been approved to that level, or to MRP level. We don't see why it won't be approved. We're just kind of waiting. Hopefully by July it will be. We can proceed to depopulation. We have hired an appraiser, getting ready to start appraising that very hopefully in the next few weeks, so that we are ready to go when it is approved and we can proceed to depopulation. Once again, I want to thank TAHC for being very patient with all of us gone. I know that it's been very hard. They've had to fill in and do some jobs that we should be doing. And I want to thank everybody for their patience for that. Hopefully this will be over in the next couple of months. They're working very hard to clean up the high-path AI. The hardest thing about it is, of course, you can't clean these up overnight. Once they depopulate, they have to go through a cleaning and disinfection protocol. Then they have to do environmental sampling, which takes about 30 days. And they can repopulate. That's another 30 days of testing. So it doesn't just happen overnight. So, any questions?
How do you keep this from occurring next year?
It's a very good question. Biosecurity is our #1 finding. And I hope they embrace that.
Can you explain that briefly?
I can, and there's a whole realm of that when I say biosecurity. But for example, some of these facilities, for example, the ones in poor condition, around the entire top of their roof, there's a gap where wild birds are flying through the barns. And those barns became infected first. Coming onto the premise, a lot of these premises are right next to a county road, basically from U to I to a county road. There are no fences, no gates, no anything. And their feed trucks, their employees, they go from one barn to the next. They have no PPE. They don't wash their tires. No protocol whatsoever. And most of them are now implementing some kind of a biosecurity protocol, which they didn't originally have. E-deliveries. They're now coming to the gate and depositing at the gate into some kind of a feed bin or something else versus driving onto the farm. Those are kind of the basics, just basic biosecurity protocol. Before I left Minnesota, we went to the largest turkey growing producer in the US. Amazing facility, a relatively young guy, and he was one of the first ones hit. And it was because his employees were working at a neighboring premise as well. They didn't have good biosecurity. Then they came right over to his, never showered, never changed clothes, never changed shoes. They knew exactly how he been instructed. So it's just basic things like that.
Dr. Hazel, is USDA considering some kind of a future agreement where to be eligible for future get the funds and producer would need to agree to some basic biosecurity? Did I bring that up or is that in discussion?
No, it is in discussion. Yes. And they have to agree to some kind of biosecurity. The exact definition of that but they have to have a biosecurity plan. It has to state certain protocol like that. And the other interesting thing that goes on that is that, for example, we have the very first infected premise in Minnesota repopulated this weekend. And unfortunately for them, they are in the northern part of Minnesota away from the heart of the rest of the high-path AI. But the rule is now that if you repopulate and you're in an infected area, that county is still infected, USDA will not pay indemnity if you become infected the second time. That answer your question? Any other questions?
I do apologize, Dr. Hazel, I know last time you were here, you were with Dr. Varner, and at the time you couldn't speak too well, you were kind of not feeling well. But did you essentially take Dr. Varner's place, or is your position what Dr. Varner's position was? And is that your position with USDA?
It's a very good question. It's part of the reorg.
Because I wanted you to kind of
Yes.
share it to where the group could get to know you a little bit, because we do work a lot together, and we're partners on a lot of these things, and hope to continue that with your leadership.
Absolutely. So yes, I am the assistant director, which is formerly the AVIC of Texas, which was Dr. Varner's position. Yes. And so all the new state leaders, state AVICs are now assistant directors. They were AVICs, and then they were assistant district directors, and now they're assistant directors, and that may change in the next 6 months. But right now, they're all ADs in each state. Some ADs have multiple states. For example, Dr. Brewer has Oklahoma and Arkansas. Dr. Angel has Mississippi and Louisiana. Fortunately, I just have Texas. So I am Dr. Varner's replacement. Dr. Varner is now the leader of District 4, which is Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas. So he is the director of District 4. His office is based still in Austin, but he's very seldom in Austin.
You're in Austin.
I am in Austin. I try to be in Austin. It's been pretty slow right now. I was formerly in Kansas, actually a field veterinarian in Kansas, hired by Dr. Varner many years ago.
Well, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Now Commissioner Simmons will give us the audit subcommittee report from y'all's meeting this morning.
Chairman, we had this Monday came in reporting on the follow-up on the audit of 3 to 7 and item 3, and there was we had 2 items, the serial numbers not matching, and management taking action. So Monday, no further action was necessary. And item 4, which was a program record, say this is the reason we do these audits. Dr. Ellis explained a lot of it went on, but we had a condition where these permits, 154 out of 2,324 e-permits didn't reconcile. So it was explained to us that management need more help up there. The testing up in the panhandle is ballooned so action is going to be taken. But we still had a 94%, is that right, Dr. Ellis?
Right, it's not real.
Of all
6% were not.
all the e-permit testing and some action has been taken, so, you know, they will find this, but, we know the problem and we're working on it.
Basically, the permits were closed, so they didn't have the information on them as to how they were closed. The information that's missing for the most part was test results on baby ear calves that may be done in 10, 15, 20 different groups to close out one permit, 300 coming in, 70 get tested one day, and 12 the next 5 died. And so our region needs more help, but they weren't filling out all those things on there. They were saying that we got it done, so we ought to just like that, so you can tell us details, how to close it, work with software to capture that, and more people to panhandle, and truthfully, the department of corrections group in the corner there. Should not close those out, and we just have to put in an opinion or status where they're probably okay, but they're not closed out, and we can accommodate this audit request eventually. But it's a numbers game right now, just a massive numbers of data. So that brings us after this.
Chairman, I move to approve the audit summary report discussed today.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the audit subcommittee report. Is there any discussion? If none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have item 8, presentation of authorized personnel update. Dr. Culp, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. You have in your packet a written report of all of our authorized personnel activities, but I'd like to take the next few moments to really highlight some of the significant things that have happened since the last time I reported to all of you. One of the most significant things that we have been working on since the authorized personnel program began was a new database that was mentioned this morning in the audit committee reports. And the new database is basically an authorized personnel software application, which captures absolutely everything that you would want to know about any of our authorized personnel. So you've got everything from contact information to their certifications as veterinarians, if they're TRIC certified, if they're authorized personnel, if they've done their TB certification for CERVID. It's got all of their certifications, including their the date of certification, whether their certification is expired. That updates every night automatically. And in addition to that information, it also has information about whether or not their Texas license is up to date, their veterinary license, whether their Category 2 accreditation with USDA is up to date, and it also contains information on whether or not they're authorized with Texas Animal Health Commission. The other aspect of the database, which has actually just been updated last week, is that we can now track all of our interactions with veterinarians, including issues and actions related to Chapter 47, authorized personnel, our rule. And so it can track all of our interactions with veterinarians regarding any violations or issues regarding authorized personnel. So we can keep all of that interaction documented in that system. Some additions that will be coming to the authorized personnel database in the future are that we'll be able to do significant reporting out of this database. So let me move into another program that authorized personnel has been working on, and I mentioned this at the last commission meeting, and that's our disapproved CBI process. I mentioned that the last meeting, and with the disapproved CBI process, let me tell you a little bit about what that is if you're not familiar. Essentially, veterinarians in Texas who issue health certificates on animals moving out of state. If that health certificate gets to the state of destination and it does not meet their entry requirements, that state sends that health certificate back to Texas, and they ask us to provide that back to the veterinarian and let them know that it was disapproved and sent back. And so with the disapproved CBI process, we have updated that entire process to where we now notify our veterinarians once a month. They get an entire packet of their disapproved CBIs all at one time. And we've wrapped that process into our new authorized personnel system. And so we're actually tracking that documentation that we have with our veterinarians in this new system. And so that process with some of this new and improved reporting that we'll have in the future, at the end of this week, we will be able to generate a report of all of the disapproved CBIs that we sent out last month, and we'll be able to provide that to our region veterinarians and let them know who in their region received letters over the course of the last month. In addition to the software that we've worked with development to get working with authorized personnel and the dispute CBI process, we've also developed an entire new committee and process to evaluating veterinarians who are in the authorized personnel program. And the committee has a formal meeting process. We meet on a monthly basis. And if there are any violations to the authorized personnel program, that is where we discuss those violations or issues. And then we determine what sort of actions we might take, if anything, and then we document that in our meeting database. So that's been a significant development since the last time I met with you all, and I wanted to take a few moments to actually elaborate on that more than is in my report to you all. I looked at the database this morning, and I pulled up the number of authorized personnel that we have signed up and registered for the program as of this morning, and that's approximately 1,500. We do have a plan for where we're going to move forward with this program, because we do still have about 400 veterinarians that were in the previous brucellosis program. And we've been trying to reach them since we started this process and get them to fill out the application and send it back in. And we still do not have those 400 veterinarians signed up yet. And so on June 15th, we're going to go ahead and ask our region directors to call the veterinarians that are listed in their regions to ask them, do you still want to be in the authorized personnel program? And if you do, we need your signed application by August 1st. If we don't receive the signed application by August 1st, our plan is to contact those veterinarians by certified mail and let them know that as of September 1st, if we don't receive their application, that we will go ahead and they will not be able to participate in any regulatory programs in the state of Texas after September 1st of this year. So we do have a plan for making certain that everyone who does participate in regulatory programs in the state of Texas is in our program, and a deadline for that. Our certified CWD program is still working at scheduling programs and training personnel for the certified CWD sample collector program. I mentioned at the last commission meeting that Laura Guerra has taken over the management of that training program as of November 1st of last year. She's continued to schedule training for the CWD program. She has one on Sunday of this week up at Texas A&M. We have one scheduled in September at Southwest Veterinary Symposium, and she's working on scheduling 2 more in Region 7 and Region 5 in the future. To date, we've trained a total of 215 individuals in the certified CWD sample collector program. The other thing I wanted to mention, which I'm really personally proud of, and just wanted to highlight from my report, is some additional training programs that we offer here through the authorized personnel program. We offer intern and extern programs with the agency. And new over the past couple of weeks has been an intern program that we've offered through Texas A&M Kingsville. I have been contacted several months back by Texas A&M Kingsville, and they have a program that is through USDA, and it's called USDA Step Up to Careers. That is a grant program that funds a student for 10 weeks to be able to participate in a regulatory intern. We had several applicants for that program. They selected one, and shortly after we accepted that one applicant for her 10-week internship, they contacted me again and said, would you take 2? And we said, yes, we would. So they're participating in a 10-week internship. They're undergraduate students in animal science at Texas A&M Kingsville, and they're both working down in 5. I think they're having a great time. They're a huge asset to our workforce down there in Region 5, and I think Region 5 personnel really appreciate having them there. So after this year, I do suspect we'll probably have more Texas A&M students working with us. In addition to Texas A&M Kingsville, we have 4 veterinary students who've expressed an interest in working with us. One is a second-year student, she'll be spending the entire month of July with us. One is a 4th-year student who will be down in San Benito for student decided to do 22nd in Cameron County. One is going to be spending 4 weeks with us next spring. And then I actually got a telephone call from a veterinary student from Purdue yesterday who would like to spend 6 weeks with us. And that program is just very near and dear to my heart. I feel very strongly about giving these students a really wonderful experience at Texas A&M Health Commission. And I'm hopeful that it actually is cultivating the next generation of employees of USDA and Texas A&M Health Commission. So that is all I was going to report on this morning, unless you had any other questions for me regarding authorized personnel.
These two from Kingsville, they part of the technician school there.
Yeah, so Rebecca Vela is actually from Laredo, and she is applying to the test program this fall, and her ultimate goal is to go to vet school. The other one actually is finishing with a science degree. I think he's going to be his final year this year. He's Juan Casares, and he has grown up around the tick force and animal health commission. He knows most of the people who work down in Region 5. And I honestly want to tell you, I think that he will probably be looking for a job with us whenever we have a place in Region 5. So,
They actually have a veterinarian mother down there.
I don't know him. I think you know him. Yeah.
And I want to thank Dr. Trump because we've had a vision of working with students for years with no one having the idea that someone actually doing it. A few things, she stepped up and did a great job. You're right, succession planning for all of us is important. As we get older, we got to find the next generation. This is one of our tools. I want to thank the students. Good job.
Great, thank you so much. And now, the presentation, communication initiatives, Callie McNulty and Thomas Swafford. Callie,
Good morning.
good morning.
All right, so Bonnie is currently at a training right now, so I'll be speaking on her behalf. We've had a huge number of news releases go out since the last time we saw y'all. So everything going from EHV1 to BS to things dealing with emergency management. We have a number of exhibits coming up. It's summertime, so everybody has their conventions and conferences. So we'll be at a wide variety of things such as Texas Deer Association, ICA, pork producers, will be everywhere. We've had a number of interviews on print, radio, TV. Everything is in y'all's binder, so if y'all would like to read any more about our news releases, those interviews, or anything like that, just look a few pages and you'll see it all. We've been very active on social media. We are on YouTube. Instagram is new, and we actually have a lot of followers, so that's been wonderful. At this time, I'm going to ask Thomas to come up, and he will show you a video and speak a little bit more about our department.
So I'm just talking right here. Recently, we were down at the Texas Department of Emergency Management Convention down there. We gave a presentation on Texas video research things all well for everybody. And it was a great turnout for that class. And what we're doing is very, very progressive. Informational videos that talk about Cameron County and our efforts down there and pretty much the whole operation. Our YouTube channel is live. We have at least 3 videos that we posted in the last few months that have accrued over 1,000 hits. And to put things in perspective, we've had a video down, but since before I got here, it's been posted for about a year. So we had about 700 hits in a year for that. This one I posted, we posted about 3 weeks ago, and it's already over 1,000. Yesterday with Clint back there is over 1,000. So we're reaching a different audience, we're reaching more people, and we're doing a good job. It's pretty exciting. So I'm going to show you this video. It's about 3 minutes long.
Down here in South Texas, Cameron County, was part of a joint task force between USDA and Texas Animal Health Commission.
The leishmaniasis is the whole reason we're concerned about the fever tick. It's a disease that they can carry and transmit to cattle.
They're already out of the permanent quarantine zone, and now they're in the temporary zone. If they continue to move, it can be very detrimental to not just the livestock industry in Texas, but the livestock industry nationally.
The cattle down here in South Texas may get exposed from time to time from incursions from Mexico.
Want to get rid of them, it's going to be a lengthy process. It's not something that's going to happen in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months. It's going to be a lengthy process. Ultimate goal is to get the ticks back into the permanent zone.
Looking at our history, back in the 1800s, they had death losses up to 90% in those cattle herds, which is why we got our start. They put it in Barberville, Texas cattle, because they were a threat to theirs.
That's what got the Animal Health Commission to start, was the little thing called the fever tick. And here we are, a year later, still finding.
That was the whole reason for starting the cattle fever tick eradication program in an effort to push it back to Mexico, so that other states would have faith that we have a safe supply of cattle.
Well, if you put a fever tick within the blanket zone, we're responsible for having our hands on every head of that livestock to get them scratched or stretching from head to toe, dipped if necessary, and take care of all those animals. That's a big task. They're implementing a thing called a 14-day pass. We have stations set up, and that's for movement restriction. And if horses need to be moved, they can't do so without restrictions. They need to be sprayed out before they can actually leave the area. And they can be sprayed on that 14-day pass. So we have to have people available to do that at all times, be available, those producers, so they can move when they need to move. What we're doing in the surveillance zone, in the blanket zone, we're going door to door, we're trying to identify every animal, every equine, and every head of cattle in those zones. How old is he? You can pull up, do an inspection, and go ahead and scratch the horse right there, and if they don't have anything, no ticks at all will leave these horses. We consider that a done deal. Put it in the map, put it on the chart, it's done, and you can move on. That's what we're looking to do, just prove what's not there too, not just necessarily what is. One of the most important things that people need to know about this is it's not a human health risk. We're strictly worried about the livestock industry. It really is ultimately for the good of the whole state of Texas and all its producers, and also the national scene.
We just put a disclaimer at the end, explain everything that we're might have left out. That's pretty much it.
Well, thank you. As soon as I saw this video, I called Bonnie right away. I called Dr. Ellis. And just to say how impressed I was, and this is the future, folks, and this is telling our story, and did a phenomenal job putting that together. Those three work, you and Bonnie and Callie work great together, and I think it's just going to improve the relationship we have with the whole state and telling our story. We've never been able to do that. And I thought that video was phenomenal, and it didn't waste any time. It was quick, not a lot of BS in it. It was just strictly the facts, and I thought it was great, fantastic.
I reposted that on Facebook, and it was very interesting, the comments that I received back from people that knew nothing about all that going on.
And it's
Fantastic.
It's in layman's terms.
That's awesome.
You can say we don't have any veterinarians running that.
My biggest struggle is getting people on camera. Loosen up. That's a strategy, but it's how do you make fever ticks entertaining or worth watching? Get that knowledge and get that message out. So it's been pretty exciting. Thank you.
So I want to congratulate, this is actually the 1-year anniversary of both Callie and Thomas, and right they are the future. We're proud to have them, and you've got new videos coming up this summer on emergency response, working with USDA on some different initiatives as well. I've worked with the campaign, and they do vampire bat. The vampire bats in South Texas, by the way, so that's a whole other issue. Anyway, but I just want to congratulate them as well, both Thomas and Callie.
You bet. You bet. Thank you all very much. Dr. Hughes Garza will give us a laboratory update. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. As always, pleasure to be here, give you a brief update of the activities of our lab since the last time we were here. And before I start, so I don't forget to do this, if anyone has not had a tour of the lab yet and has some time today and is interested in going, let me know. I'm after the meeting that happened. As you see in your report here, bovine tuberculosis, it's obvious that we've had a lot of activity with that disease over the last few months. That's keeping that section of our lab busy. Just to give you a little bit of a perspective, we currently have 3 employees who are fully approved to actually run that test for tuberculosis. We have some others who can assist with different pieces of the test, but that's basically 3 people. Depending on the month, since November of last year, we've been running anywhere from 2 times to 10 times our normal sample volume for TB. A lot of that testing has been done on weekends, just to facilitate scheduling of the big herd tests. From a field standpoint, it's easier to just line all that up and have people deployed up there and do all the testing all at once. So we've had people at the lab Saturdays and Sundays, and so I wanted to take the opportunity to make sure that everybody knew that our lab was doing that and how much I appreciate all of our employees who participate in that and are continuing to do so. And, you know, not to brag too much, but there's only 6 labs left in the country that are approved to run bovine tuberculosis testing for USDA. That number has been shrinking over the last several years. So that's an important part of our lab. It's an area where we're obviously getting more people trained and involved in it just to make sure that we have there. So. I mentioned in here also with over Memorial Day weekend, we had a call from a veterinarian who had a producer who was kind of in a bind with some cattle that were needed to be moved and needed to be tested, and they were in a rising floodwater situation, and so we again had some people that Dr. Ellis mentioned that we're in the process of getting approval from USDA to run vesicular stomatitis testing. There's 2 approved tests for that disease. There's a complement fixation, which we already run a similar test for brucellosis for that, and then there's a PCR test. And so we've gotten the PCR training. The CF training will be finished next week, and then we have to get a panel from USDA of known samples that everybody who's going to be testing has to run those, show them the information in that test, and then hopefully get that approval soon. And the goal there is just to be available for our lab to be activated if there is another large outbreak like we saw last year. We won't be running routine testing, so if somebody needs a test for export purposes, then we'll all still go. But it would allow us to activate if we're needed. To give you an example, last year, a lot of our cases were right here close to Austin, and I was just going out and doing some of those investigations and driving samples back to our lab to send them down and FedEx them to Ames, Iowa. So if our lab had the capability of running the test, it would already be right there. So I think that'll be a good thing for our agency for all of our ability to respond. So. I gave you a little snapshot down at the bottom of your report of just our sample volume over the last few months. If you have any questions about that, feel free to let me know. And then finally, I wanted to welcome our new quality assurance manager. Her name is Becky Beam. She's here with us today.
Welcome.
Becky comes to us, she has a degree in microbiology, and she's done quality assurance more in manufacturing positions in the past, in a couple of different industries, but there's a saying that quality is quality no matter what industry you're in. I actually think she's brought already some really good ideas and kind of a fresh perspective on some of the things that we're doing, so we're really excited to have her. With that, I'll take your questions.
We're doing, you're checking, identifying ticks and mites.
We are, and we do ticks and mites. We get occasionally larvae. We supply surveillance kits, little prepaid mailers with all the paperwork. still are sending those out to vet clinics. I think there's been quite a few of them distributed down.
Get it out of the regional office.
The region office can get them or we actually have the tick that was discussed earlier that everybody's eager to identify. Tentatively, maybe.
Don't have the old kids from Moore Field that you sit down there.
Yeah, we don't do any of the genetic analysis. I think that goes through mission. We just do the identification.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Jeff Turner, I see you hiding back there. Come give us a report on emergency management. Have you been busy? I'm sure you've been busy.
Oh, he's here chief all week. Part-time now. We have Commissioner Keysar. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here with you. We'll go over a little bit of things that we've done. Got together last. We have been a little busy. Had a few things going on. So we hope we don't get busier than we are, but I'm afraid we could be. So since we got together, we've done a lot of presentations, along with a lot of conferences. That's been pretty good, getting out there and talking to a lot of folks. Still working with a lot of jurisdictions across the state, trying to get some plans developed, get people kind of excited about emergency management a little bit. It's not too hard when you've got a lot of things going on. All the way from your country up north to southeast Texas, people can kind of get doing something with livestock, some water and a lot of it we hadn't seen in years. So there's been a lot of response through our agency doing different things. We've been fortunate. A lot of the things have been handled locally. Our agency, our guys out in the field, the staff here, we've been in the State Operations Center a bunch, DECs, disaster districts across the state, helping coordinate a lot of response. Some big issues that have come up, y'all probably seen or heard some of them, like cattle in some low spots, some horses, some different things. We do cats and dogs in disaster. Wichita Falls had a lot of involvement there, some things up around Band, getting our folks engaged there with the tornadoes and stuff that happened. So some different things, you know, that it's been a business plan. So see what the summer plays out like. Other things we've kind of been involved in, we've been talking about that foreign and emerging animal disease plan that we've been working on for pretty good years, so a year and a half. And we've had stakeholder meetings and a lot of discussion on that, and we just about got it wrapped up. Our part of it is pretty done. We're still waiting on a couple of our partners, other state agencies, to get a few pieces they have that they wanted to get them done, and then we'll have that wrapped up. With that, the Panhandle group, called it the RRAP project, it's a regional resiliency program. It's a federally funded thing that they did up in the Panhandle a few years ago and been working. It's wrapped up now. They developed a lot of plans that are going to kind of springboard off of the plans that we had written at that time. With that, the feds have come in and agreed at the national level, the National Exercise Program, to come in and do a funded exercise with the cattle industry. They're doing some different things. And we're in the development stages of that right now. We're going to do a tabletop exercise where we all kind of sit around and talk about how things should go later this fall. And in the spring, we're going to do what they call a functional exercise. So that's going out there and doing some different things. So working with the planners and designers of that exercise, we're going to kind of, as the agency, we'll be doing some injects, asking maybe local jurisdictions what they have, how they could help respond to different things. And so that's going to be a good outcome of that program that they did. Also a good test of the plans that we put together. I'd rather test them on the front end in an exercise than worry about trying to see how that will actually work. So that's a pretty good thing there. So one thing, another plan that we discussed earlier, it was discussed by some other folks, was HiPath AI and stuff that's going on. Worked with, went over to an exercise at College Station. They called it an exercise. It was a really good discussion between industry and a lot of stakeholders. Our agency was there, different folks speaking about how we can respond or possibilities of what we can do if we get avian influenza
Dr. Ellis and a few others have mentioned that that's a pretty good likelihood. I was just on the call, sitting back there still, listening to some folks talk in North Carolina about their response up to Iowa and Minnesota and what they've done up there. So Dr. Hazel, she has a firsthand experience being up there, and I hope we don't need it, but we need to really be prepared to get ready for that stuff. Some other things I've written down to talk about was the flood stuff. We've kind of gone into that. There's a lot of stuff going on across the state. Still working with jurisdictions, no matter where we are. We're going out and making sure that we're knocking on doors and talking to folks. Really trying to work with our local jurisdictions with these floods, with the veterinary communities, seeing what their infrastructure is like, making sure that our partners on the local level can get things done, if they need help, making sure that capability remains in place. So other than that, I don't have a lot more. A lot of things going on. Any questions?
So are you coordinating with county emergency response committees? And if they have a situation due to flood, livestock being trapped somewhere, then they know who to contact?
We try to work with, and that's a try. 254 different jurisdictions are all on the kingdom out there sometimes. But our local inspectors, we really ride on them pretty hard to stay engaged on that local level, to get in there and be part of their, we call it an animal issues committee on that local emergency management level. Have somebody represented there from our agency that's that first call. If I know your phone number, your cell number, I'll just pick you up and give you a call and give you a heads up. Some of the jurisdictions, they can take care of stuff, they're pretty good. Some of them, what's the capabilities of, some of the larger cities even having cattle panels to go out there to control that happens. So we try to stay in pretty tight with the local guys. Big part of it.
That was gonna be my question, basically, off of that. All the counties in Texas, there's gotta be some that just have no emergency management planning, is that correct? The reason where I'm going with this is that, down there where we are, there's a big concern of this proposed Senate bill where if they don't have an emergency management program, the state comes in and takes over an emergency situation. I'm not referring to us, I'm talking about the whole situation. And like the medical examiners, and other people that are involved in multiple county areas are kind of concerned about that bill where their capacity to take care of themselves in an emergency situation would be taken over by the state. Are y'all familiar with that?
Is that the Ebola bill you're talking about?
It's their description.
Yeah, I didn't think it passed. Y'all know?
It was headed in that.
Mary's not in here. I don't think it got,
No, there was a lot of pushback.
There was a
on
lot of pushback. I didn't know if it.
that. County judges in your county jurisdiction.
We were real concerned about it. We have a good program. Most of the counties that I practice in have a great program, but, they were concerned about that bill.
We're, the appropriate way and being somewhat of a purist on emergency management, it's a local bill first, and there you need help in the country. So we supported that. So it's, that local take care of things, and if you need help, just give us a holler.
Great, thank you, Jim. Stephen Luna, budget status report. A little about Stephen, he was there helping us when we were having to testify, Dr. Ellis and I. We sat for hours and hours and hours and wait, and then we would come up to testify. All the senators would leave. Remember that? I'm telling you, I was so angry. Stephen kept me calm. I
was just praying they wouldn't have to see the question.
Go ahead, Steve.
I too would like to echo Dr. Ellis and Mary. I'm grateful for the support we have from y'all and from the stakeholders on this session. Like Mary said, Dr. Ellis said, it's still not over. Technically, the governor can veto it, the line item veto. We can just have to sit and eventually become law and decide. So basically, every day I'm checking it like an expecting father, expecting the firstborn. So I'm gonna just expound a little bit upon what Mary talked about, give you the numbers. Due to, I apologize, and because of how late it is, and we did not know the amount, I don't have the budget all finalized and real pretty and all this stuff for you. So in the book, we have, the current budget for 15-year, and also on the bullet points, I provided what it looks like it's going to be unless there are line items. So again, the House and Senate have approved it. The governor, House Bill 1 has gone to the governor. House Bill 1 and 2 are still also waiting to be verified by the comptroller. Anything that involves appropriations is always verified by the comptroller to make sure it's on. So first off, on general appropriations, we had 8.1 million for fiscal year 15. As Mary mentioned, the unexpended balance authority, which we asked for every session, that helped us go make it through this year. Basically, really helped us move approximately $600,000 from 14 year to 15 year, which helped alleviate some of the pain from the fever tick and financial from fever tick and the TB testing going on and all the other little things that flared up. For 2016, we're going to have approximately $10.9 billion in general revenue, and 2017 approximately $10.1 billion. For 16 year, that is a 34.5% increase above this year. So financially, I would like those like that. Federal funds stand about the same. We're currently for this year, we're using federal fiscal year 14 funds. We have $2.1 million. We anticipate approximately the same thing, 2.1, 2.4 million for federal fiscal year 2015. And just so clarify, federal fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. So we sort of bisects. We've got 5 months of one state fiscal year and 7 months of the next state fiscal year. We did receive additional capital budget funding. We still have 300,000. Well, we have the base of 300,000, 150,000 for technology refresh, keep our computers up to date, considering how fast they get outdated. And we also had 150,000 for fleet. For 16 year, we also got an additional $110,000 for fleet, and we're also getting $110,000 for 17 years. So it brings our total for fleet to $261,000 per fiscal year to allocate towards. On the supplemental funding, like most of y'all know, it's $188,000 for fever tick is what we TB is what we received so far. What we anticipate to receive on the House Bill 2, $601,000. I would like to give y'all a special note. Pull it out real quick. The agency has established event codes to capture specific costs, so we keep track of them. And the agency as a whole through March had expended $300,000 alone for TB, and for fever tick, $791,000. Now, not all of this is that includes regular salaries, which technically don't fall in the category. What we were claiming for the supplemental was based off of overtime hours, additional hours that our employees were working above and beyond. But I just wanted to let y'all know that that's right now we're well over $1 million at the end of March for those two diseases that the agency just expended right there. So the supplemental is a blessing. We also, like Mary said, we lost about 25% of our fee revenue authority starting September 1st, about 25%. We anticipate keeping the other 75%. That is for health certificates and for trial registration. And we get to keep $424,000 up to 512, then, so 80 some odd thousand goes back to the state, anything above that we get to keep also. And that would be for 16 and 17 year. And again, we're gonna utilize the fee revenue for fleet purposes strictly again. We're just gonna keep going where we go. Yes, for fiscal year 16, we're appropriated 183.2 FTEs, and for 17 years, 184.2. Additional appropriations, like Mary said, the centralized accounting and payroll personnel system, which is what the state's putting out over the next decade. We've also received appropriations for that for 1 FTE for 41,000 a year. So we realized the $4.8 million that Mary talked about. That includes Farrell Swine funding, $6,000 towards the executive director salary equity, the board of security region, and the capital budget authority, which for the buy-in comes to $250,000. And that is all I have at this time. If you don't have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
I don't think so. I guess not. Thank you, Stephen. Good work. And now, Marissa Schmidt's going to give us the consideration of possible action on agency contracts and purchases. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you can imagine, with everything that we have going on, we do have some purchases that we were asked your approval for.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just informed, not sorry to interrupt, that the previous was an action item. So if I could have a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the budget status report.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget status report. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. See, I don't pay as much attention to this little strand as I do a piece of paper. So I'm sorry, and I'm sorry to interrupt. And thanks, guys, for bringing that to my attention.
Okay, so I'm bringing to you the contract purchases and leases that exceed the $25,000. And for your approval. We have two separate actual groups this time. One group is for the remainder of this fiscal year, which goes through August 31st. That's on page 1 and 2. And then beginning on page 3, we also have purchases that we anticipate making if you approve, and if we get our budget approved by the governor, that will begin September 1. We just wanted to get a jump on that. I'm happy to entertain any questions you have about these purchases.
Any questions? If not, then I have a motion.
Chairman, I move that we approve the contract purchases.
Been moved and seconded to approve item 13, contracts and purchases. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Gene, it's your show from here on out.
All right. We'll start off with a little compliance report. I got to say, my hats off to our two investigators for the amount of work they've done. These numbers for this particular 6 months was very impressive. They've done 88 investigations all over the state, but they filed 153 different complaints. 4 of them were 4 major categories, which had a total of $38,212 in fines. Basically, though, like I said, 4 of them were related to specific categories. One was a very large calf range, which was convicted. So it's dairy, the TB testing of the small calves that were coming in 2 months later. So that was one that's a problem. The other 2 more were related to a lot of cattle, out-of-state cattle that consistently coming in that were not being appropriately identified for interstate movement and stuff. So in those cases. The 4th one was actually very interesting. Back in January, we passed a rule that provided for pyro testing on quarter horses and brush tracks, for which there's a significant amount of brush track activity in the the state, but that is a very difficult or dangerous area for us to actually go in and handle by ourselves. That said, we have made inroads working with DPS and Texas Racing Commission. They will go and make visits to these facilities on a specialized basis. We participated in the most recent one that was up in East Texas, Coffin County. To understand that it was 2 miles long in vehicles just to go on of all the different law enforcement. That said, they had 53 complaints to be filed based on folks that did not have their proper test options. That alone was a large amount of 36,000 in that case. But I think it was a very good opportunity for us to help network and work with these folks on these bus tracks. We'll be able to go and attend on future ones. Also helps get the message out. You know, I think folks, they hear about the fact they need to have the test documents, particularly highway, which is where we were trying to make inroads into. So I thought that worked significantly. You know, a couple things too about the compliance, like I said, the investigation. Well, I want you to know he worked 1 weekend checking horses for their PIA documents at events. He checked personally 976 horses in 3 days, which I just thought was a phenomenal number. And for which, frankly, most folks have their pockets. So we did not have that big of an issue, but I was just very proud of it. The other thing I would note compliance-wise, and I had talked to Thomas, you can see from that video, when I saw it, I was very impressed. So we're going to actually use him to make some small videos that will give DPS. They told us that when they don't stop a livestock vehicle, they may not know much about it, but they'll go back to their car, get on their computer, and if there's a video posted on their site, it's 2 minutes long, they'll watch it and know what to look for. So we think it'll be a tremendous help in doing these videos and use them for DPS to help hopefully deal with giving better information so that they're able to help us with looking at vehicles and stuff. So overall, I felt very good. Today, very busy. My hands off to this.
Who gets the money from that?
This all goes to the local jurisdictions. We found Justice Peace has been very good. It all goes to them. And it's up to them how they choose to assess the fine. You can't get for someone who's full amount. The Class C misdemeanors up to $500 plus court costs. But it's all up to one.
Well, why don't you move on to 15?
All right, let's work on the rules. All right, Commissioner. We have 3 proposals for y'all to consider today. The first one's Chapter 38, criminoses. This is Dr. Elsie indicating came out of the work group, the recommendation for 2 things. The first and the biggest was requiring the testing breeding bulls in pastures adjacent to where triggers been positive triggers been disclosed in order to further ensure, try to control the disease, but also that they can get to the root cause or at least something been exposed. So this was one of the recommendations of the group. The other was to harmonize the age requirements for which a bull can be sold without having to meet the trichinosis test. So 24 months is being moved down to 18, so that it will mirror our interstate minimum in Chapter 51. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions? Can I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we propose the amendment to Chapter 38, trichomoniasis, located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code as discussed today.
You want to have a 30-day comment?
I further move that the notice of proposed amendment be published in the Texas Register with a 30-day comment.
Second. Been moved and seconded to approve item 15A, Chapter 38, trichomoniasis. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next rule proposal I bring to you is Chapter 41, which is on fever ticks. As Dr. Ellis indicated, with the activity going on in Cameron County, and the previous rule required permanent identification in the permanent quarantine zone. But now with the addition of the visiting zone in terms of management, this rule was intended to require that those within any area or location has been restricted fingertips that further identification required, so as to ensure that we can help with the development before it's lost track of necessarily.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the amendment to chapter 41 feeder ticks located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code as discussed today. I further move that notice of the proposed amendment to be published in the Texas Register within 30 days.
Been moved and seconded, we approve item 15B, chapter 41 feeder ticks. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The last rule proposal I bring to you is chapter 51, which are entry requirements. There's two changes proposed. The first is regarding BS and allowing the rule to be redefined when the state has been affected or has an outbreak of BS within the state. It automatically reclassifies the requirement for CBI to be issued within 14 days of entry, so as to ensure that there has been a review by veterinarian of these regulations. It's being proposed, FYI, for statewide application. However, I will tell you, comment-wise, one thing we're interested in is to see it may be more effective to make that real focus on areas or counties. That's one thing. But we propose it at the state level to do a more maximum exposure right now, to provide y'all more latitude at the adoption. With comments and stuff, we may want to reduce that down to it'll only impact counties or areas versus the whole state. But at this point, we'll make it broad enough to the other change in the rule was to move the age requirement for bulls coming in that did not need a trichomoniasis test, moving it from 12 months to 18 months. It's easier to be able to identify and ensure, as well as it will harmonize it with other states, as well as with our own internal requirements.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we propose the amendments to chapter 51, entry requirements located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code as discussed today. I further move that notice of the proposed amendments be published in the Texas Register within 30 days.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 15C, excuse me, chapter 51, entry requirements. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move to agenda item 16, and these are proposed rules up for adoption.
Absolutely. I will note on this, we had one comment for each rule. I thought it was interesting. I had one across for each one. But anyway, so the first one I bring up is chapter 47. Dr. Philip indicated this for our authorized personnel program. This is actually the CWD sampling component, which will affect veterinarians as well as laypersons who would choose to practice and submit CWD samples. We did get one comment. It was from Mr. Bochuk, who was the head of wildlife services for USDA, and actually is a very active participant in dealing with animals out there as well as doing testing protocols. His question basically was, they do take a lot of training and want to know if we will give it equivalency status, which we will. They've already been taught to evaluate what their training is to ensure that they're able to meet the standards necessary that they can get that training recognized by us as being sufficient equivalent for having CWD authorization. There are no changes were made to this.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adopt the amendments to chapter 47, authorized personnel located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 16A, chapter 47, authorized personnel. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
The next rule adoption I bring to you is our entry requirements, chapter 51. This proposal had been to reduce the the certificate of veterinary inspection validity from 45 days to 30 days for equine. Texas traditionally had a 45-day period. The rest of our animals were on a 30-day time frame. We're reducing from 45 to 30 for a variety of reasons. One is to meet the federal standard, actually 30 days, and then Secondly, it harmonized with every other state, we would know on the 45 days. The third thing was it allowed us to ensure that a vet had seen the animal within a reasonable time prior to coming to Texas. So we did get one comment. It was from a producer that I think thought it was EIA focused. Really, wasn't as much anything BS helped drive it at the time to make sure, the person also thought that owners should be able to decide to help the soundness of the horse in moving it. I don't know if that's necessarily the most valid of arguments, but needless to say, they didn't merit any change, and he just didn't see the benefit, which I think the state of Texas ensuring that we get animals that come in and healthy and sound is a primary concern for which all this should be negated. So I think with that, there was no change made to that rule.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the amendments to chapter 51, entry requirements located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code.
Been moved and seconded that we approve item 16B, chapter 51, entry requirements. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We have one more, right?
Last rule, this is our feral swine. This is chapter 55. This is where we were proposing to remove one of the double fence requirements for a feral swine holding facility. We also at the time were making a number of cleanups and homogenizing the section, maybe read more correctly. We actually ended up making a change for which I will say this one comment I give a lot of credit to. I love his name, Leroy Moses-Gombe. He's actually a feral swine trapper who actually 8 years ago sat on our feral swine work group when we first did the rules. And when we harmonized the rules, one of the things we did with the fence, particularly for the authorized holding facilities, was to ensure the fence has to be adequate for them egress or ingress, can't get in or out. But we also went ahead and made that harmonized change to game preserves. And he read the rule and actually called me and reminded me that when we originally did it, we specifically allowed that these game preserves could allow for fences where they could allow for ingress. The animals could come on. It allowed them to get on, but they couldn't get back off. It also prevented tensions on the fence. And I had totally forgotten about it. But he remembered it, called me, reminded me. And so we do make a change in terms of harmonizing this and removing the fact that for game preserves, the fence only has to be adequate for that egress. They can't get out, but they can get on. Because they do design these fences so they can get on. So my hats off to Mr. Moses-Gombe with a name like that, being a feral swine hunter in Texas. He's something else. And he reads our rules. They go out for publication. So,
and let's not do any farming, I guess, if they want it in and not out.
No, that's absolutely. Even just game preserve wise, he just wanted them on. But I'd forgotten we had a long, articulate discussion, very articulate on the fences. So anyway, so we did make that change to make it back for them to allow the feral swine and the fences to be
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the amendment to chapter 55, swine, located in Title 4 of the Texas Administrative Code.
Been moved and seconded that we approve item 16C, chapter 55, swine. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Dean, thank you. Item 17, recognition and public comment. No public comment. Dr. Ellis, do you have something that you need to present?
Well, I think we've got a couple of awards. We're going to go into executive session, they do those first, then do the what some people believe that they want to.
Okay. Well,
absolutely, that's what I'm saying. Let's go
sure,
ahead.
let's do that.
Yeah, that's 3 awards.
Okay. And then I have one when you're finished.
That's one of those 3.
One of the 3? Okay.
I have 2 or 1.
Are your folks here?
Bruce is Boston and Bruce is.
Okay.
And then I'm going to do Andy's.
Okay. And I'll do yours.
And then someone can do yours. Get an award of some sort.
Yeah.
All right, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Ron Brockenbush, I'm the supervising inspector for Region 7 in Rockville. I've been asked to come here today to present a 30-year service award to
Inspector Bruce Chandler. I've only been a supervisor for a short time in this career, but I would say that he's one you can always count on when you need a guy to go and drop him a hat. And just want to say I appreciate your service.
Yeah.
Bruce goes everywhere.
Yes.
Boots on the ground, dirt in there. Always.
Congratulations.
Maybe, Bruce, you want to do a picture after this is over? Bruce and I started almost exactly.
Section, same region.
No, he was a different region. Oh, yeah, we were on the same region. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember, it's been 30 years ago.
Oh, Tim, you were just down south.
So I have an award to give to Dr. Andy Swartz. It's a 25-year award. And Andy, if you want to come on up, basically, Andy's, the rock for all for us. He's a good friend at work, a good friend away from work. He's my seat of tranquility when I start gunslinging and doing things, call me to help. And sometimes he knows way more than I do. So I think he's an integral part of the quality service that agency is putting out to our industry. And I want to thank you, Andy, for all your service over the last 25 years, Dr. Swartz. So.
Now it's your turn, Dr. Ella.
Okay. We're supposed to stand here so that the camera can see us. Just forgot that. The camera's over there.
We're fine over here?
Yes, yeah, we're good.
Okay. You are getting, I'm not gonna read it all, okay? I promise, but I just took a few notes because this is your 30 years of service to the Texas Animal Health Commission. I didn't know your middle name was Barkley. Barkley Ellis. You worked for the commission before you got a little bit prior, and then you graduated from vet school in '85 and worked in private practice. And you graduated from vet school in 84, and then in '85 you started with this agency. And you started out as a veterinarian in Wharton, Texas.
Not a good start.
Right in the middle of when nobody liked that Texas Animal Health Commission. Certain people had to take certain steps to help alleviate some problems we were having, brucellosis, and just to hit on a couple of other things. In '86, you got the position of Area 7 director. And then in '95, under Terry Beals, you were commended for several things. Just commended by Terry Beals is a great accomplishment. Terry was a very good friend of mine. That's kind of when I got involved in the agency as a commissioner. And I didn't really know you that well then. And then you moved to Austin in 2003?
December
of 03. And then in 04 was promoted to Deputy Director of Animal Health Programs. And in 2010, January, became our State Veterinarian Executive Director. And you and I that was a couple of years into my chairmanship, and it seemed like when you became Executive Director, the timing was just terrible. I'm serious. This agency was in turmoil. We were losing funding. We were losing. Dr. Ellis was under a lot of stress, under a lot of stress, having to let people go and see this agency basically be cut in half. And through the last 3 sessions of hard work, he and I together, with our ups and downs, because we've had them, we've gotten through it. And so this is a small token presented to Dr. Ellis for 30 years of service to the Texas Animal Health Commission.
Yeah, oh yeah, man.
I'll let you do it. You do a better
Come
job.
on up. Oh, yeah. We should get trophies. So Jim Tran works in our IT department, but he's also the strongest guy in the agency. He works out a lot, but Ben has been instrumental in for the last 2 years for the state of Texas awarding the Animal Health Commission. Are we mid-sized?
We're a mid-sized agency.
Mid-sized agency, most fit agency. It's based upon a percentage of our employees that work out so many times a week. And I actually grant, I think, an hour and a half a week.
4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours. If they complete.
That seems like too much. I give 4 hours. No, anyway, I actually grant our employees time to ever so often take an extended lunch
An hour
before
and
they
a
go
half.
work out. How much?
An hour and a half a week.
Thank you. I thought that was right. An hour and a half a week. And what percentage of our employees? 80% of our employees are trying to maintain a fitness level. And there's lots of categories: working, roping, chasing a pig, going to the gym. There's all kinds of categories. But if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have won this award. And Ben has herded us like sheep, not cats, and made us all do what we're supposed to do. And Ben has two trophies. I want to congratulate Ben and the agency for our most recent award, Ben, and that was just in the last month or two. We won for the second year in a row. Who did we beat? Who was second? Texas Utilities Commission. They don't stand a chance. Anyway, Ben, I want to congratulate you for being the leader for this. And these are the trophies we get. We're going to put them in the trophy case next to our district championship. He does 2 workouts a day, not one.
Wow. He's also the biggest eater.
On to item 18 is, as you heard earlier from Mary, one of our budget items that I felt very strongly about was to try to get our executive director compensation in line where I think it should be. And not just for our executive director, but to allow him to pay a lot of his staff what they're worth. And right now, they're not being paid that. We were not successful. We, however, had a change from his current level to, what was the raise, Mary?
It's about 13,000.
About 13,000. So with that, following all the regulations that we have to go through, I have to ask whether any of the commissioners want to go into closed session. I made a call that we just go ahead and approve. The commission has to approve that raise, so Dr. Ellis can be compensated with what the legislature deemed was appropriate. So with that, I don't personally care to go into closed session. If there's any commissioner that would like to go into closed session, please let me know. If not, then I would appreciate a motion to approve the increase in salary for our executive director.
Sure. I move that we approve the increase in executive director salary as discussed today.
And I have a second. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 18, increase in executive director salary. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And we can go straight to item 20. And setting a date, are we going to need to have a September meeting?
When would you do it, in October? I mean, normally after the summertime, after the first of this fiscal year, that'd be right. We don't need to one before then, right? Unless something changes, I would recommend September. That's just another thing. If it's about, I would just say this, that we may bring back to y'all, there's some rules that were introduced today, other than the strict rules, obviously fairly complex. We didn't do a lot because of the session and there's a lot going on. We've been putting off some probably some substantive rules that need to be addressed, and we'll be talking to each of the department commissioners to see if you guys want to move rules to that. And there's some things that there are some more important rules that we've not talked about that we should consider, that we can actually consider. And I think, I don't think we should work September.
Okay. You think we should meet in September?
I do.
Okay. Okay. And I've shared with, Dr. Ellis and some of the staff members and some of the commissioners, I've been at this job a long time. I told the governor's office the last time I was appointed as chairman, I really doubted that I would finish my whole term. I love this agency. I love serving this agency, but I just think I've been here long enough. I've had some health situations I've gone through, and I've got new grandchildren on the way, and a busy business, but I'm gonna stay on at least through the end of the year, until the governor's office can find a new chairman. So, I'll be with one more meeting, maybe two.
September, October, my recommendation would be to come back after Christmas in January, early February. I would just recommend staying.
Okay.
September, October.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else?
You want us to just close a couple of days out, maybe?
Yes.
See y'all, have Amanda work with me. If you're okay, we'll just close out.
Okay. Okay. All right. Then I deem the meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.